that helped develop this resource that we're talking about today, Listen and Talk. And we'll give you some background to it in a little while. But so there was myself, Caroline, and so we're from Western Sydney, and Josie Lardy, who's here online, Anna Godden, One-Ear Godden, and Helena Lardy from the Jukmingan community, which is in the Northern Territory, not too far from Mataranka, if you know that, or from Katherine, 135 k's southeast of Katherine. And also later, Sarah Bock will be coming to join us. So she's from an app developer company called eLearn Australia. And you'll be hearing from her. Well, she'll be here throughout the workshop, but particularly at the end, she's going to talk to you about, if you're interested in setting up a program, how you might go about that. So, Josie, I might just ask you if you'd be happy just to say some words, just to say hello.
Hello. I don't know. You said it all.
Where are you from today?
We're here in Jukmingan, me and Helena. Jukmingan is Mara country. And yeah, only one relevant one, what's that word, Mark? Only one person that speaks Mara properly. So that's why we wanted to do the app. Mark had a few hours, good hours recorded, and he wanted to give it back to us. And we were thinking, well, in the past when we've got recordings, I just sit at the school pretty much doing nothing. So yeah,
great.
Thought of the app.
And the speaker who's still at Jukmingan today is Josie's auntie Sheila Conway. And so now I'd also introduce you to Anna Godden, who is Josie's sister, and One-Ear, who's Anna's daughter, One-Ear Godden. Hello.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Good morning, everybody. Well, here it's morning.
We're up in Ravenshoe, Northern Queensland, right?
Yeah. I guess just a few words that I wanted to say was it's just great to have this app, even as just to bring everything together, because I worked many years at the Jukmingan school, and we had, over the years, lots of people had done lots of different things, and so you'd be forever looking for stuff. So it's great that we've got it all now together. So if anybody, like if the teachers want to use it or whoever, it's all there together and they can access it quickly. So that's what I really love about it.
Great. Okay, so that's the design team put the thing together. I'm now going to introduce the interface team. So part of this is also that, so there's the output side of it, but then it was also getting the data in. And that's also what you're going to be looking at today. When I first did it, you will see that it was kind of a fairly complex process, but we've been working together with Janet Wiles' team at UQ, University of Queensland, and also with Sarah Bock from eLearn Australia. So there was Janet Wiles, Sarah Matthews, Sarah Bock, myself, and Catherine Heiser. Yes. Anyway, so we have Janet with us today, who's going to also talk to you a little bit about the development, and Sarah Matthews will be joining us a little bit as well, and Sarah Bock will be with us later. So Janet, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm acknowledging, coming in from Mianjin, so Brisbane, acknowledging the Turrbal and Yagara peoples. I've kind of got a hybrid background, computer science, and I'm interested in language technologies, and I'm particularly interested in how a technology escapes from one lab. So that's where this was a fantastic opportunity to look at the value that this this system that Mark's created is valuable for one community, and what does it take to enable other communities to use it also?
Great, thank you. And Sarah's not here just yet, Sarah M or B. Yeah, there were lots of Sarahs, and Catherine Kaiser is not able to be with us today either. All right, so I'm just going to quickly ask other people on the chat to just say something about themselves, possibly why they're interested in this workshop briefly. And I'm just going to say your name and go around what I can see on my screen, if that's all right. So Devasina, would you like to say something?
Good morning to everyone. I'm Devasina. I'm from India. You can call me as Sina. It's totally fine. And I'm currently a master's second year student in robotics and automation. So I come from a complete engineering background, but my research is on developing conversational tools for rural communities in India. And I felt this was the perfect opportunity for me to learn on how to use these resources in my home country, India. And that's about me.
Great, thank you. Wanyima?
Hi, my name is Wanyima. I live in Canberra at the moment. I'm originally from Alice Springs. I've just finished an honours degree at Melbourne Uni on child language acquisition in Pitjantjatjara. And I'm just really interested in ways to create useful resources out of linguistic data, I guess, yeah.
Great, thank you. Jane?
I'm Jane Simpson, and I'm speaking from Wiradjuri country at the moment. And I'm interested, just like Wanyama, in how do you create useful resources from existing language material. I'm really interested in what Anna was saying about the importance of bringing everything together in one place. And I'm looking forward to learning more about it.
Thank you. Manuel?
Oh, hi. Doing language documentation in China, and I'm very interested in the intersection between language learning and language documentation, and how we can use specific methodologies to integrate this to sort of realms.
Great, thank you. Stephen?
Hi there, I'm coming from Lutruwita, Tasmania, on the Pania People's Country. I work with tribes in Myanmar, otherwise known as Burma. Unfortunately, I've got a lot of data recorded because it's pretty impossible to get there at the moment, and the tribes I'm working with are currently being attacked. One group is about 4,000 speakers, another one's about 10,000 speakers. So yeah, any kind of technological thing is an advantage because every single person in Burma, including kids, have mobile phones. So, you know, mobile apps for dictionaries and anything like that are all the big thing now.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Samantha?
Hi, everybody. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
Samantha Disbray from the University of Queensland, coming from Yagara and Durabal country. And I'm interested in, I guess, the same thing that people have said, the intersection between language documentation, archival materials, and repurposing them for community language learning. Yeah, so thanks.
Great. Alison?
Yuma from Ngunnawal country. I'm working with Jane on Murawari language revival. We've got over 100 hours of recording of the language, and we're wanting to repurpose it into a way that is accessible to the community. And I'm sorry, you may have heard me making breakfast when I joined and my mic was on. So sorry about that. Looking forward to today.
I think this is the lovely thing about technology, is that we can sort of get a little window into everyone's lives. I've seen more things than it's surprising sometimes. And actually, Caroline and I look like we're in the same place when we're actually not, but there you go. Okay, Hannah?
Good morning, everyone. I'm coming from Yugambeh and Bundjalung country on the Gold Coast. I'm at Griffith University. I'm a first year PhD student working with the Yagara community to assist with language revitalisation. And I'm particularly interested in the repatriation of traditionally collected corpora materials and documentation, like back to the communities and assisting with that kind of work.
Right, thank you. Hallie?
Hi, I'm Hao Yi. I'm joining from Larrakia country in Darwin. I've just finished my first field trip in Northeast Arnhem Land, working on Gunung language and art documentation. So I'm interested in making something useful for the community with all the data I've recently collected.
Thank you very much. Michael?
Good morning. I'm in Canberra. I'm studying a Masters of Linguistics, and at the moment working with Jane and Ali and Ruben, who's also here, on reviving the Moriori language.
Great, thank you. Annie?
Good morning. I'm in the field. I'm in the town called Nauru in Gariada country, which is Port Hedland in the Pilbara region of Western Australia. And I've got a really crap internet connection, so I'm just going to keep my video off.
That's fine.
I'm the senior linguist at Wongamaya Pilbara Aboriginal Language Centre and a first year PhD student at Charles Darwin University. At the moment, I'm working on projects with Uparajara, Manjajara, Gariara, Nyabali and Mangala language speakers. And my PhD is looking at the archive in the Language Centre. So this is really timely for us looking at what people are producing and how they can use the technology for that, but also as we sort out the archive, how we can leverage technology to access archive material.
Right, thanks. James?
Hello, everybody. I'm coming from Larrakia country in Darwin. I teach linguistics at Bachelor Institutes, and yeah, like a lot of people here, I do a lot of work on language documentation and also language revitalization and maintenance. I guess I'm most interested in this masterclass sort of in relation to a project I'm working on with Badimaya community in Western Australia, where we've got lots and lots of recordings, a fairly good language documentation for that language. But yeah, we're looking at creating resources and creating content for community speakers to reconnect with our language. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Ruben?
Hello, everyone. I'm also speaking from Ngunnawal country, and as Ali and Michael have said, I'm working with them and Jane on the revival of Moriori. And in addition to that, something else that interests me about this is that I've learned a number of languages before to varying extents, and something that always limits your, or sort of frames your ability to self-study, is the tools that are available to you. So anything like this, I'm always interested in to see what people are creating and using.
Right, thank you. And Peter?
Hi, I'm in Kulin country, Melbourne. I wanted to join this. I have worked as a linguist in bilingual programs in the NT, particularly in Numbawa School, where they have a language revitalization bilingual program. And I was always interested while working there, and I've continued to sort of go back there periodically to help out with that program. In sort of, yeah, using technologies in the classroom with the kids, because there's still sort of about maybe 50 elders that speak the language, but the children sort of have to learn it as if it's a foreign language. Yeah, and I was sort of interested in the time as well in sort of using like sort of simple video games and sort of fun activities like that to kind of teach aspects of language. And I was always hoping for something that would sort of use phrases, because I think it's actually really pedagogically effective. So that's why I was interested in this.
Great, thank you. And I'd just also like to introduce Josh Butler. So he's not a participant per se in this workshop. He's here for technical support, and we're really appreciative of your time, Josh, this morning. He'll be flying around the other various masterclass that are happening around the place too. So very glad, and you're more than welcome to join in any of the groups or whatever, so as you see fit. Okay, great. The first thing we'll do is I'm just going to show you an outline of the day and just give you a sense of what we're looking at. Just let me get that up. It's never where you think it should be. I'll share my screen. So I did send this around, but we'll just quickly look through it again, and hopefully so far we're sticking to time, which is pretty good. That's a good start. So just basically there's a little short video that Caroline Hendy, some of you may know, who's now in Hawaii, put together for us, just a little showing you just what the thing looks like. Then I'm just going to give you a short background to the development of Listen and Talk. And then myself and Janet will just talk a little bit about the data input side. So really there are two aspects to this. One's the output and one's the input. And so we'll talk about that. Morning tea. Unfortunately, we can't offer you anything, but hopefully you've got something yummy to sustain yourself. Then we're going to organise. So the main thing about today is that it's to give you a hands-on experience. Of course, you want the background and you want some of the theory and research behind it, because that's where it comes out of. It's not just sort of any old thing. It's actually been quite carefully thought about. But we really want you to sort of have a go at using it and trying to put something together. So we've put together some resources. We've used Hungarian data because Hungarian data, we didn't want to use someone else's language. That's not ours to share. But Hungarian is similar to, well, it's not similar to a lot of Aboriginal language, but it's a morphologically rich language. So it's got lots of suffixes, lots of prefixes. And we thought that for people working with Aboriginal languages and Australian Indigenous languages, that this was something that could give you an idea of why we came up with these sorts of strategies. So that's the data. You don't have to speak Hungarian. We've tried to set it up in a way that you can make use of it. But of course, you're free also to use any languages that you know or have, and a combination of both. So the point is not to produce a resource in Hungarian or any other language. The point is to have a go, and at the end of the day, you'll come up with something that will have some data in it of some kind, and that might be a combination of all sorts of things, but that's fine. Because at the end of the day, end of the session, you won't actually have ongoing access to those resources. This is just for a trial, but you can then talk to perhaps Sarah. If you were interested in taking it on, then you could talk to Sarah about it. So we have 4 databases set up, and what we've sort of said is that the sort of 4 people that were sort of interested in taking something on, the first in, first served, these databases set up, we could sort of take those on, but that's for later. And so, yeah, activity 1, this will just, we're going to ask you to imagine a scenario to try and contextualize it a little bit, and then think about creating topics, subtopics, language content around that scenario. And then think about images, audio, and glossing. I'll explain what we mean by glossing a little bit later. And then actually hands-on, trying to put all those things together. And then we'll ask you maybe just to sort of have a short present what you've come up with, and maybe talk about the issues that you came across as you were trying to do that. And then Sarah will talk to you about actually setting up a project if you thought that was something that you might want to do. Just to give you the practical logistics of doing that. Okay, so that's what it looks like. we're going to begin. I just will stop that share and begin by playing. If there are any questions before we go on? Okay, in that case, I'm going to just share again and play the one. Not that one. Sorry. I'll just share my desktop. That's the simplest way. It's always difficult when you're toggling between various things. Okay, this is one we want. So this is a web page that we've put together that tells you about listen and talk. So just a bit of background. And this is what so actually when I'll explain in a minute, when we developed this resource, we developed it specifically for the Jukmingan context together. So it was a co-design with the community, with eLearn Australia, with WSU researchers. And that resource is called Warma Mangarai. But that's something that's reserved for the community, and we'll explain the protections in place there. So it's not something that we can share, but we've put together a Hungarian version that really just lets you, and you can try that here yourself. If you click there, it just lets you, use that. But here is Caroline Hendy telling us
Welcome
about
to this tutorial on some features of the Listen and Talk app. I will be showing you these features through the Hungarian version of the app using a Chrome browser on a Samsung phone. The home screen of the app looks like this. As you can see, there are different categories of words and phrases. If we click on one of the categories, for example, general conversation, it will take us to another screen that has subcategories. If you then click on one of the subcategories, it will take you to a series of phrases or words that are related to that subcategory. You will see that on the left is the English, on the right is Hungarian, in this case our target language, and you can listen to the target phrase by clicking on the speaker icon.
Mi van veled?
To find out more information about a given phrase, you can click on this ear icon, and that will take you to the entry for that particular phrase. Here you can listen to the phrase again by clicking the play button.
Mi van veled?
To listen to a slower version of the phrase, click on the turtle icon and then click on the play button again.
Mi van veled?
To listen to the phrase again at regular speed, simply tap the turtle icon once again and then tap the play button and it will play at regular speed.
Mi van veled?
Some phrases are part of a longer conversation. If this is the case for a given phrase, then you can click on the In Conversation icon to the right here, and it will show you the other phrases in the database that are connected to this phrase in a given conversation. You can then click on the speaker icons in sequence to hear the conversation.
Mi van veled? Sokat dolgozom.
If you want to go to another phrase in the same conversation, just click on the ear icon. You can learn more about the grammar of a particular phrase by clicking on this information icon. This shows color coding and different bold areas that correspond to each other in the Hungarian and a literal translation into English. A feature that is available on the app version but is not yet available on the browser version of the Listen and Talk app is the opportunity to record yourself speaking. This microphone icon, when available, will allow app users to record themselves speaking the target phrase and compare their production with the recording that is in the app. If you're particularly interested in a given phrase, then you can add it to your favorites. To do this, simply click on the star icon to the left. You will also see that there is a star icon to the top right. If you click on this, it will take you to all of your starred phrases. Across the top, we have another couple of features as well. Firstly, there is the search bar at the very top. With this, you can search for any word in English or in the target language. You can also search for different terms using the list option. This shows you a list of all the phrases and words in the database. The filter option allows you to filter by different categories. In this case, you can filter by the English, the Hungarian, whether it is a word or a phrase, the function in the language, and linguistic keywords. There is also the Have a Go feature. The Have a Go feature takes any words and phrases that you've starred, as well as any related words or phrases, and lets you drill them in a more targeted fashion. As you become more familiar with the words and phrases, your number of emu eggs will increase, and the challenges will get harder. Thank you for watching this tutorial on some of the main features of the Listen and Talk app.
Okay, so there's a really lovely overview by Caroline. Caroline, who's now Caroline Hendy, who's in Hawaii as a student, PhD student. So you can see that the key elements of this resource are independent language learning, and really that's the key function. And when we were designing it with Jukmingen in mind, it was really aiming at key adult language learning. So a lot of programs and resources are designed for schools. We really were trying to sort of look at older learners who were keen to learn some Mangarai language. So it's independent language learning, contextualized phrase-based learning around topics and subtopics, searchability, so being able to find words and phrases through predictive search box keyword tags, memorization, so actually consciously, deliberately memorizing phrases, targeted learning activities requiring retrieval, and we'll talk about that. And then this idea of minimal glossing. So as linguists are pretty familiar with the idea of glossing, but this is a sort of a more minimal version to provide learners with an understanding of the function of different elements of the sentence. So it's not comprehensive, but more targeted. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen again with this. Just let me find that. Yep. Feel free to ask any questions at any point. There's not.
Mark, is the app available offline? Can you download the content and then use it without internet access?
Yes, that's absolutely right. That was the key point. That is, when you download it, all the functionality is there. And these things also, so it's, we're updating it, and at various points it updates automatically. So when a new version is put up, the phone at a certain period of time updates. But it can also be done, so like we're going to do today, it's through a link. So it can be an app, or the resource we're doing today is simply a link on a computer. So it doesn't have to turn into an app necessarily, because there's a whole lot of processes involved in doing that. But yeah, but the key for us was that it's not something you have to access the internet all the time in order to make it work. Yep.
Mark, I've got a question too. Is it, how does it go with one word rather than phrases, just one word to one word as well?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it goes really well. So in fact, and feel free, Josie or Anna or one here, to jump in here. Josie did interviews with community members who used it, and they were pretty keen to be able to use it to go out on country and say, what's that tree, or what's that plant or fish or whatever. But the thing that people enjoyed about it was that when the response you got wasn't just the word, it was actually all of the phrases in which that word was used. So it was contextualized.
That's good.
Yeah, so is that fair enough, Josie, would you say?
Yeah, because most of like animal and tree words they know, so they'd be able to pick up the word in the sentence or something and go, oh yes, so that's talking about that tree, and also builds on it. But we have quite a bit of just word stuff in our resources at the school. And Mark was working on a project about chunking, like putting things into sentences instead of just the one word.
and that was sort of a big thing to Mark, like to put into the app, so that it was more hearing words in a whole sentence to be able to put it together.
That's great.
Yep.
Because I know that I've used Duolingo to learn Irish Gaelic, and there was the strengths where it did start, total from scratch with words to get the phonology and everything. The criticism often is that the sentences that they have or the phrases that they have are completely unusable in real life. And as a linguist, I don't mind that, but I think a lot of other people did. But it sounds like this has the flexibility to meet the needs of the community, which is really good.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, because I'm trying to learn German on Duolingo, and it's like, your bull is pretty, and I'm like, why am I learning impractical stuff? So we said none of that stuff on this app. This has got to be practical.
Yeah, because I was that student when I was learning Japanese that made up those crazy sentences because it helped me study. So I don't mind it, but you can't use it with anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and Caroline has just added here in the chat. You'll feel free to say it, Caroline, as well. Read it out. But I think it's important, and we'll talk about that. Is that we designed this for this particular context. In the context, we worked from archival materials because that's what there was, and it's the idea that there is a speaker there, but she's recorded a lot of things already. So it's the idea of just kind of we want to make use of that and really value the time and effort that went into that. And it's a great, it's a liberation in a way to design for a particular context. So sometimes when people are designing, say Duolingo, they're designing for a whole range of contexts. So to be able to sort of say, well, we want it to work in this context, and we presume and we think it will work in other contexts as well. But as long as it works in that context, we've done our job. So yeah, was there anything you wanted to add, Caroline?
No, all good, Mark. All good,
Yeah.
thanks.
And I think so when we talk about a part of the idea is that, I guess this was the idea of the glossing, is that on the one hand, these phrases are kind of communicatively useful. On the other hand, there are ways that you can use it. You should start to develop inductive processes to start to see patterns in grammar and structure, etc. as well. Okay, all right.
Mark, Peter's got a question.
Yes, Peter.
I was just what Josie mentioned just sort of made me think about, I think that's a really good point, that often people who want to learn a language already do know bits and pieces of it, but the problem is just sort of knowing sort of how to use it and put it together. And that's definitely something that I've seen with Woodboy, where like sort of kids know bits and pieces, but really feel intimidated by having to actually use it. So yeah, I think that's a real strength of the phrase-based approach.
Yeah, and that's where we started, was when we, not 2016 or so, we talked together with Josie and Alina and Anna and Wania and other community members about what if here we've got these resources, what would you like to be able to do with them? And everyone was really keen to be able to say something. So it's say something in some everyday context. Really, that was the I guess the bottom line.
Yeah, totally. Like I've tried using Anki, which is a flashcard memorization kind of tool that you can do phrases with, but it's just very labor intensive, and it's not going to be appealing to just someone who's not like really obsessive about sitting at a computer and making flashcards.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Learning a language is a hard thing. We all know that. We're all interested in languages. We know it's not actually that easy and takes time and commitment. So this is just trying to find ways to make it as easy as possible, I guess. Samantha.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a comment thinking about the mixture of archival and then potentially contemporary recordings. I mean, archival materials may have, you know, usable contextualized phrases that people can learn, but they also have that huge value of being, with permission, older style of language, respected, particularly authorized and valued material. So I like the idea of it being mixed, perhaps then with contemporary speakers tailoring and filling in gaps of particularly useful things. So thanks for, you know, raising my thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, that's a super important point. And feel free, Josie and Anna, to jump in on this, because we did, you know, obviously everyone who's worked with archival material knows that it's not always ideal in terms of quality. So these phrases we worked with were recorded in the 90s on a cassette player, you know, with, you hear the clunks and all sorts of stuff. And sometimes, you know, and that was the feedback we got from community members. Sometimes the quality was, you know, it was a bit fast, or it was a bit this or a bit that. But when we talked about it, the value of people hearing voices that they know, they recognize, was really important in this community. Do you want to add anything, Josie or Anna?
No, that sounds all good, Mark.
Yeah. So yeah, the idea then was that there are some we decided, okay, we might need to redo a couple because they weren't that clear, but that's fine. I mean, that can be done, but on the whole, it's that authority that, you know, people say, oh, if that's Auntie Sheila talking, then that's important, you know, or if that's you know, someone that the relative that they know, that's important, and so that relationship is important. But at the same time, as you say, if there are speakers, as in Jukmingan community, we can actually go to Sheila and say, look, you know, how might you say this, or how might you say that, and record it actually now, which is the next project, basically. Yes. And so, Sina.
Yes, so the thing I came across many of these apps, like for example, Duolingo or even Google Translate in general. So what they kind of do is each of this app has its own audio database, and they have their own pronunciations. So doesn't each community have speakers who may pronounce these sentences in different ways, or the words in different ways? So how is that kind of accommodated into the app?
So in the context we're working in, there isn't that problem. So way people speak Manggarai is, there's a fairly, you know, it's not like there's dialects and different things. And certainly that's something that could be an issue. And I think that's something that each, you know, people would have to think about and discuss about how they might set that up in the data. It is certainly something that a lot of communities would have to deal with. Yeah, I agree. Luckily, we didn't have to. Okay. All right. So I'll just quickly give a bit of background. We've already actually covered some of the issues, which is great. And I like the idea that it's much more, obviously people come to this with a lot of experience and their own experiences. But just let me give a bit of background, and then we'll go from there. So I'll just share this again. I'll close that up. All right. So I'm just a little background to the development of Listen and Talk. So my PhD explored ways that archival recordings could be repurposed to support independent adult language learning. I work with members of the Jukmingan community, who some of whom you've now met, and that's a community in the Northern Territory, remote community. And I previously collaborated with that community. At that time, Josie was in high school, but I worked with Sheila and Jessie and Amy Demgeik, Jessie Conway and Sheila, and Jessie Roberts and Sheila Conway, mainly, and some other speakers. And today, though, the language at Jukmingan is, so people is an English-based Creole, is the main language spoken today. Mangurrai, the traditional language of the community, still has a presence, particularly through Sheila Conway, but other older speakers who have grown up with the language. And it's, as I mentioned before, it's got extensive morphology, so prefixes, suffixes to express grammatical relations. But the issue is that it's now difficult for learners to access Mangurrai speakers. In workshops with Jukumingan community members in the early stages of the PhD research, participants expressed a desire to be able to say some things in Mangurrai in everyday context. So we explored these contexts, what they might be and what you might want to say. And in your folders, when we've got some folders set up on Google Drive, you'll be able to see some of the expressions that people and topics that people were interested in, and some of the expressions that they were thinking might be useful to be able to say. Recordings of Mangurrai speakers existed as part of an earlier project to create communicative language teaching resources for the Jukmingan School in the early 90s. And the language had been elicited around everyday topics. So one of the things, I guess, and it goes a bit to what Samantha was saying, is that the particular resources were used were a particular kind of archival resource. We know that archival recordings can be of all different types. These happen to be recorded around topics, of everyday topics. So of course, it makes sense that they can be used in this sort of topic-based kind of learning resource. So it turned out that a number of the expressions that community members were sort of interested in being able to say actually existed already as part of that corpus. And I've sort of, you'll see that when you have a look. So based on the earlier work of Van Eck and Trim, we developed this framework, which we call Chunk Bank, to organize the material around these three important parameters. So topic, such as health and body care, then subtopics, such as, say, sickness, and then language functions. You know, what do you want to use this language to say? And you can see that through these language functions, you could build up a longer kind of a conversation, if you like. So asking what's wrong? Oh, that's what's wrong. Why is it wrong? Give some advice. You can see that you could build up a little dialogue using these. So learners, the idea of scaffolding learning by saying, well, if you choose one chunk out of each box, you could have a bit of a conversation. So this was the kind of thinking that, you know, sitting behind the resource. So the model here is, this model summarizes how the different elements of the Jukmingan context can work together to support the development of digital learning resources. Speaker Sheila Conway is at the center of the model as an expert Mangurrai speaker, and through recordings she and others who have now passed away have made. So I'm not going to unpack this in detail, but we're recording this session and you can have access to it later. I've also put the slides, a PDF of these slides in your folder, so you can have a look back afterwards. But I'll just point out a couple of ways that we found phrases organized in a chunk back framework could scaffold learning to promote greater independence. And it's these ideas here. So the phrases model authentic Mangurrai usage, and they reduce the choice learners have to make to be able to use them. So we refer to that as reduction of degrees of freedom, as they come already prepackaged, so you don't have to know detailed grammar. In addition, learners can use inductive processes to begin to see patterns in structure, cognitive structuring. So the minimal glossing system that we'll talk about using color is designed to help learners notice these patterns. Language learning is a big task, and this organization can provide direction. So direction maintenance, give learners a bit of direction. So in 2020, Caroline and I received CoEDL funding to again work with the Jukmingan community to develop an app for learning Mangurrai, which is called Warma Mangurrai, Listen to Mangurrai, based around that model we just looked at. The development built on open source coding from ARD's Rumbopoe Dwa app, which saved time and money. The design process had three important elements. So co-design, a small design team was brought together with representatives from Jukming and WSU, Western Sydney University, and eLearn Australia. And so that's the design team I referred to before, with Wanya and Helena and Josie and Anna, and then Caroline, myself, and Sarah Bock. We worked together, and as it turned out, we worked online, but that was always part of the plan, not just because of COVID, but because of we all live in different places. So the idea of local knowledge is so important in this context because it's essential to maximising the chances of the design meeting the needs of the community. So user-centred design is the wider community feedback was sought at specific points throughout the development to ensure end users were part of the whole process. And then an iterative design process. There were 3 phases: the prototype phase, which is version 1, version 2, then version 3. And the design of each version was informed by community feedback. So the prototype was working together with the design team, but we also got wider feedback from community members. Specifically, community members were asked to try version 2 for 20 minutes a day over 5 days and give feedback in the form of an interview. And we'll look a little bit of data from that later. And then we were able to, using this feedback, come up with the final design, version 3. We also sought feedback from the design team about the co-design process itself. So we're interested, we as linguists, we always, say we're doing co-design, we're working with the community, etc. We were interested in finding out whether they had the same vision as us, whether they really thought this was a co-design process. And I'm happy you can talk to those design team members later, but there was a consensus that on the whole, it was a good thing. And we did, I think we worked really collaboratively together, and that was the consensus. But, feel free, anyone, to jump in and contradict me. Hosting. So this is an app. It's been developed into an app. It's freely available through the App Store and Google Play, but can only be opened with permission from the community through a token system devised by Sarah Bock. The token allows you to open the app once on a device, after which it is no longer required, but the token can't be used to open the app on another device. So it's stronger than a password, which can be shared around. And this protection was really important for the community, although it's not a necessary feature of the app or this resource. I mean, the resource can exist without that. So listen and talk, which is really the resource I guess we're talking about today, is basically Warama Mangarai minus the Mangarai language data. So it's the shell that sits behind that resource that we're calling listen and talk. Obviously the language data remains the intellectual property of the Jukming community, and that's a really important aspect of the development. So Warama Mangarai was designed to be effective for learning specifically in the Jukming context. However, the design is likely to be applicable to other revitalisation and non-revitalisation contexts, and that's what we're interested in exploring. Traditionally, Mangarai people avoided using words that sounded like names of people who'd passed away. Although this has changed over time for many people, we included the warning that you see here when you open the app, for people for whom this is, still important. And so we don't want to ignore that real respect and that traditionally important cultural element. And in some other communities, that is stronger, and that is something that would have to be considered when using something like this. But there are solutions to that as well. For example, it's possible, not in this resource, but I'm sure working with Sarah Bock, it would be possible to be able to hide certain of the sound files, because you could tag it by speaker, that's part of the metadata you put in if it was important to not be able to hear a certain speaker's voice if they passed away, for example. Okay, so from a learning perspective, so the prototype version of the app focused on reference features. So the first version was about reference, organization, and searching. Version 2 introduced targeted learning activities. And these were based around deliberate memorization of language or deliberate learning. Research in the field of deliberate learning has mainly focused on words rather than phrases, and has shown that this is an effective way of learning vocabulary. In terms of retention or remembering words, there's little evidence that contextualizing the target vocabulary item in a phrase or sentence is any more effective than learning words in a decontextualized list. However, so that's from a memorization point of view. However, putting the word in a sentence provides them with extra grammatical, semantic, and pragmatic information, strengthening the understanding of learners or learners' understanding of the language system as a whole, and therefore increasing the likelihood that the new word can be used productively. So in terms of communication, it's much more effective then to learn it in a contextualized way. So Nation and Hunston identify 3 main processes in remembering vocabulary. So one is noticing. So the first is noticing. Learners notice or pays attention to the word or phrase. So in the case of Waima Mangarai, the learner hears or sees a phrase, and it goes into the short-term sort of phonological loop, if you like, and the coloured glossing, translation, image, etc. Help further draw the learner's attention to form and meaning. So the idea is that we try to set up as many ways of getting the learner to notice or pay attention to the language: hearing, seeing, image, colour, etc. Retrieval, or consciously trying to recall the phrase, is important to move the phrase into the long-term memory. And so, this is where Anki and Duolingo, that's the kind of, strategies that they're looking at as well. So Nation identifies 2 kinds of retrieval: receptive retrieval. So the learner is presented with a word in the target language and asked to recall the meaning in English or their native language. And productive retrieval, where the learner is presented with the meaning in English and asked to recall the word in the target language. So basically, receptive retrieval is a bit of an easier task, and productive becomes progressively more difficult. And then creative usage, as language teachers, we know that practice is important. And that the learner has to try and use or say the word in some kind of context to build it up. Repetition is important. So there's no magic number of repetitions for remembering a word or phrase, but research suggests the range between as few as 2 or 3 and as many as 50. So I mean, it's dependent on many, many different factors, and we won't go into it here. So the notion of spaced repetition is that since the late 60s, it's been shown that it's better if repetitions are spaced out over time rather than all in one go. So cramming is not the most effective way to learn. Again, there's no formula for the exact nature of the spacing. It's generally accepted that the first few repetitions should be fairly close together and then increasingly far apart. Pimsleur, who had a go at developing a schedule in the 60s, suggests that later repetitions could occur as much as 4 months after first seeing the word. And saying the word aloud or even subvocally is more effective than saying it silently. And I think people have learned, languages, that even sometimes you need to go back a year later to things that you've learned to strengthen and refresh. And the idea is that each time you're strengthening that signal until at a certain point it becomes very solid in your long-term memory. And that, again, these things vary according to learners, according to context, according to a whole range of the whole host of reasons. And use of an image as well as the meaning is a good strategy to help strengthen that association of meaning with the target phrase or word. So motivation, the target audience of the app is Jukming and adult learners who have expressed a desire to learn to say some things in their language. And here in this app, we're assuming a certain level of intrinsic motivation. So people are keen to learn. Language learning and memorization, as we've said, is hard work. And we've tried to mitigate against this in the app by making activities achievable to provide a sense of success. So for example, we provided meetings in spoken Creole as well as English, as for many community members, English is not their first language and literacy may not be strong in either language. Phrases to learn are selected in the first instance from learners' favourites. So in principle, they're phrases that learners are motivated to learn. The activities are limited to 10 phrases at a time. Learners begin with shorter phrases. So, you know, they're not confronted with something that's too long up front. In the research, the PhD research, we did one little study. It was, you know, with just a few people, but it suggested that learners could listen to and repeat up to 6 syllables in Manggarai with accuracy, which means about 20 characters in Manggarai. So we tried to prioritize these kind of shorter phrases around that kind of those numbers. Oh, sorry, let me go back. Feedback on progress is important to improve learning and sustain motivation. So in the app, spoken Manggarai feedback is given for a correct or incorrect response. So you get it, for it's correct, you get yo, ijar, and then it goes green. And if it's not, it's dai, no, and it goes red. That's, yeah, just to give people a sense, keep them on track. Okay, the data. So the data collected in this project gave us information about user attitudes to the app and suggestions for improvement through semi-structured interviews, as well as giving a snapshot of how users used and engaged with the app. In the next few slides, I'll just present some preliminary data. In this slide, we see how user data from a period in which we asked the community members to try out the app for 20 minutes a day for 5 days between May and July 2021. In that time, 19 community members accessed the app. We filtered out all the non-community members, like, you know, myself and Sarah, trying things out or having a go ourselves. And these data show, I think, you know, if we look at 25 hours in that period of time, that people gave it a pretty good go. We can see, you know, average user time, number of sessions for all use, but you know, some people used it for 20 sessions, some people just 1, obviously. But an average of 8 sessions per user, so they, you know, had to go 8 times for about 18, you know, 20 minutes, which is what we're asking for, etc. So interactions, we'll see in a minute. We'll just go to the next slide. Interactions are basically, so as we've seen, there are lots of ways users can interact with the app. We were able to get data for 10 of these interactions. So you can see play, favorite, slow. Open here is when, I don't know if you remember back to the video, but there was an ear. So you got the initial screen and then you could click on an ear that took you to more detailed information. So that's called open. Hide is where you can hide that feedback. So if you don't want to keep hearing good, 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 bad, good, you know, if you don't want to, some people that annoys some learners, so you can hide that away. And then these are the activities. Activity 1 was the recall. So that's the Manggarai to English. You get a Manggarai, you've got to say with the English. The other one is flipped, English to Manggarai. So that's the productive retrieval. And then there's the creative use of saying, you get to record it and say something. Unfortunately, so in this period of time that we're going to look at, these 2 activities in the app got conflated. So the data got conflated, so we can't separate it. That's been fixed up. So after that period of time, the period of time we're looking at now, we have been able to separate that. So this just gives you a bit of an overview of how people used the interactions they had in that period of time. And we can see obviously that the majority was play. So people just played it and had a listen. The second biggest percentage was opening the app. So clicking on that ear and getting extra information. And that's what you'd expect. So we can see in here that there's 10%. So basically the learning activities account for 10% of the interactions. So 3% for activity 1, and then activities 2 and 3 are conflated into 7%. Although we don't have data specifically saying exactly how much people learn, because that requires really setting up very carefully structured experiments, and also having baseline data, and particularly with COVID, none of these things were possible. But and for other reasons not desirable anyway. It's because the important thing that we're interested in is how people engage with the app. But we can infer learning by the fact that people did progress through the 3 levels. So necessarily, if you progressed onto level 2, then you'd had a number of goes at level 1, and you'd moved on to level 2 and to level 3. So there's inferred sense that there was learning taking place. So here we see the changes from feedback for the final version that will be put up in the App Store in the near future. So learners, exactly for that point, you move through the different levels. There wasn't a way for learners to be able to go back. And so that was implemented. Learners felt like, okay, I've progressed all through the levels, but I still don't feel confident myself that I actually know that really well. So I want to be able to move back. So there's no algorithm, unlike say Duolingo or Anki, there's no spaced repetition algorithm underlying this app. However, this is a way that learners themselves can take charge of their learning and for themselves say, well, I need to review this over time. I still don't know this, so I'm going to go back and have another go. And this memory game is something that learners just thought was a thing that they would really like to have. And since we had the images in there already and all the data, it wasn't that difficult. Token system, originally it was just going to one person, so we felt the load needed to be shared. So when people ask for a token, it doesn't fall just to one person. And the story section is really, there's a whole lot of older materials that have been developed over many years, and we were keen community members were keen to be able to have access to those. So when Anna talks about things being in the one place, there's a link that will take them to some of these resources that are sitting on the community website. So they're not organized anyway through the app. There's nothing special. It's just a link that will link you on to those resources. And so that's just what it looks like now, just with these little back buttons that'll take you back. So level 1, level 2, level 3, where you can record yourself. And here's what the game will look like.
Mark, do you mind if I ask a question?
Yes, I'm finished anyway, so go on. Yes.
Oh, perfect timing then. So I get the sense that the language ecology in Chilmangan, sorry if I said that wrong, is that most, obviously you have a native speaker and you have some adults who sort of spoke it when they were younger, but perhaps not now. But my guess is that the phonological perception and production of the community is probably greater than in a community where I hesitate to say the word language death, but where it isn't spoken by anyone. In Murawari, we're working in a community where there are no fluent speakers, and based on my understanding, there are very few speakers who speak much at all. We have a lot of these recordings, so we have an idea of the phonology, but one of the things that Roy Barker, the community elder, really wants is a pronunciation guide. in any kind of app we produce. Does the Listen and Talk app have sort of a shell where we might be able to put a pronunciation guide in?
I think it's something that could easily be done. So, I mean, really, this is just, this can be used in so many different ways. I mean, really, it's just, you have a place to put a sound file, you have a place to put an image, you have a place to put some explanation. And so it's really just a tool. You could put anything in those. It doesn't have to be a phrase. It doesn't have to be, it could be a song, for example. So the point is that I think definitely that if for a kind of a pronunciation guide, you would just have the letter as the written form. The sound file would just be the sound of that letter. And then maybe any other, maybe a picture of something, or, you know, so I think it could definitely be done. And that would be your category. You would, the topic then would be pronunciation. So you'd have a topic, people click that, and then they know they're going to find all of the sounds of the language.
Okay, so you'd suggest doing it that way, where pronunciation is a topic rather than something like, I'm thinking about the stories feature where it might be a different kind of tab at the bottom, if that makes sense.
And that's the thing, is the way you set it up, it's completely open. So what you'll see is it's just an empty shell, and you can populate it how you wish, and you can organize the topics and things exactly how you wish. So there's no right answer to that. And I think that's the beauty of it. You can work with your community to see what makes sense for them, you know.
Great. One final quick clarification with the section where it's like, learn more or extra info or whatever. I can see in your examples they were largely morphosyntax, kind of minimal glossing.
Yeah,
that's kind of space you could easily transform into like a pronunciation, written pronunciation. Yeah, great, awesome.
And actually, and you know, Josie might say something about this too, but in this particular context, I mean, grammar's not the most useful thing. So people don't want to know detailed grammar. It's not helpful for them to learn. And so even that kind of grammar thing is kind of a bit hidden away. You have to click on it to consciously choose to go and see it. And the reason for that is that, you know, not everyone likes to learn that way. And but at the same time, you know, we all have a sense that if you've got this long phrase with lots of bits to it, you might want to know what that bit does, you know. So I think it's the interplay between context, saying, well, I can just figure it out from the context, and between saying, oh, what does that bit do? Oh, let's have a look. So it's kind of this sort of it's a bit of an interplay between a more, you know, analytical approach and that more, you know, inductive sort of approach. Yeah.
Sorry, I just have a little question about that as well.
Yeah, sure.
So is there any way to sort of, I might have missed this in there, but is there a way to sort of add a little something that the user can sort of click on, and it gives them just a little bit of like some sort of grammatical kind of pointer if they want it? So I'm thinking of, you know, if in the language that you're learning, there might be some extra categories that you're not used to thinking of in your own language.
Yep.
So you might, so like in a wool boy verb, you've got to think about how many people are doing this action. You know, is it one or two or more than that? And how many people are they doing it to, you know?
Yep.
And so just that, it's often important, like we found in the wool boy classes in the school, to get the kids to start thinking about like breaking down a kind of event and sort of thinking about, you know, what elements do I need? You know, how many people have I got? Are they men or women? And then I can sort of think about sort of how I say that.
Yeah, yeah. Look, they're all really good things. If you could wait until when we talk about the glossing a bit later, I can talk a bit more in detail about that. That might answer your question. And we'll see that even though in the input resource, there's one extra kind of element where you'll see that you can link. So you'll set up these categories for the minimal glossing, and that's fine, and it's a minimal sort of situation. But actually there's a possibility to link out to much more detailed grammatical information. And that's in the input, not in the output. But, Sarah Bock is here now with us, and I'm sure, it's possibly something that you could kind of pull into the output side. But let's talk about it in the glossing side, because that's a little bit more on that side. I'll just get Sarah, now that she's here from eLearn Australia, just to introduce herself quickly. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
It's great to meet everyone. Great to be here. I jumped in a bit late because I got the time mixed up because I'm in Queensland. But yeah, so I've been working with the design team, Josie and Helena and Anna and Vanya and Mark and Caroline for pretty much, is it 2 years now? And yeah, on this project. And from the project, I think we've created a tool that could be used in other contexts. Obviously, it's not as high tech as Duolingo or anything like that, because it doesn't have that kind of scale budget attached to it. But I think it's been designed with community and with lots of different kinds of context. So it'd be really interesting for me to see how people imagine using a tool like this in their own contexts.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And, I'd add also that we've deliberately tried to keep it low tech. So, a common criticism of apps is they fall over. We've tried to make it as simple as possible, so that longevity, it's really more about longevity and focusing on a target set of functions, which is about access, about memorization, about, and really just focusing on those and not really trying to have too many bells and whistles. There's a question from Sina about generating conversations. We will talk about that. So if you want to just hang on to that thought, we'll discuss it and see if that answers it. But if not, feel free to re-ask the questions. And Caroline's answered you as well. Yeah. Great. Okay. Then I think the next step is we'll talk about the input side of things. So I'm just going to quickly run you through just let me stop that. I'm going to run you through one of these databases. So you'll each get one of these that's set up. So there'll be 4 groups, and you'll get one that's set up in a similar way. Okay, I'll just share my screen. Okay, so this is what the input side of things looks like. So you can see that you've got the language, target language. We call it break it down. The glossing, kind of word for word glossing is the idea, and then the English meaning. So there are 2 ways that you can put the data in. The first, if you click on that paintbrush, I think it is, you can in here edit straight into there. So you just click and you can add a new thing. So so the idea is that this should be as colloquial as possible. This should be as word for word as possible. And obviously this is the language. You can put in diacritics, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, can you put characters? I know you did a Chinese one.
Yes, you can.
And the thing is, you can cut and paste. But what I found with this browser, I'm using Firefox, and I think it might be different with Google Chrome, is that I could cut and paste out of a PDF, but I couldn't out of a Word document because it had formatting. So that's something I think though with Google Chrome, if you use it, you're on probably safer ground.
Mark, just a quick question.
Yes.
When, for the break it down section, when you say that we should sort of map it largely word for word, but because the computer then kind of auto maps your, let's call it an interlinear gloss, onto the language, or do you manually do that mapping?
I'll show you straight away. Okay, so we've put that in now. I just put it like that. You click this eye and you can just go straight to the resource to see what it looks like. And so there it is. And if I click here, see it puts it in for you in the order.
Wow, that's great preview function.
Yeah, so this bit here is the bit that means I. So in Whangarei, the great thing is that part of the orthography is that there's a dash between all of the morphemes. So you see a dash anyway, whereas in most languages, of course, you don't have it. So this is where the colouring comes in. You can see it doesn't exactly line up, right? And it's impossible to do that. But the colouring, when I'm going to do it, will, and I'm not going to do it now because we're talking about colouring later, but anyway, you can see that the colouring will help you see that, you know, if that's red and that's red, then, you know, that's going to be good. So it helps you kind of see what's what. So the colouring palette's up here, but I'm deliberately going to not talk about it now, and we'll talk about it a bit later. You can filter, so you can search here if you want to, you know, if you had hundreds of in there and you wanted to find all the ones that had work, you do that and immediately. So you can see that the minute you get WO, and it's already found it. And that's been important for us because, especially I guess for people who aren't familiar with the language, you might hear a sound, you might know half what it is in the language. So for example, if you've had, I've heard the Vodjok something, oh, there you go, it's come out straight away, Vodjok, that's the one. So it's that idea. You can also filter and sort by topics, etc., etc., etc. So there's all of that filtering. Then the other way of doing it is to go in here. And you can do it straight in here too if you want it. But here you get the language explanation. Here's where you upload your sound. Actually, I didn't type the correct one. Sorry, it's supposed to be it. It or something. Let's just put that in. It doesn't matter. You can just see. So here it is, and you upload it, and there it is, and you can remove it, and you can. So here you can manage it. So if you want to put in the data about who the speaker is, you go here, and you can put in who the speaker is. And if there were 2 speakers or 3, whatever. So you get that metadata. File source, you know, this is important stuff. Where did this file come from? Is it from some archive, or did you record it on a certain date? Here's where you can upload your image. So you browse again, and you go to your images, and you find one. I'm just going to use that one. And you, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. So we have another, most people don't, well, where was it? Cancel. So I'll just load that up. There we go. Hang on a second. That's what I want. So there it is, and you can remove it. And there's another audio here because we needed, because here, as you can see, it's not in this one. It's not, sorry. In the Whangarei one, it was important to have a file for the Creole as well, so that every time there's a word, you can read it in English, but you can hear it also said in Creole. So you can put that file here. So here you select your topic. So the topics can be pre-populated. We're wondering, and just, you know, if you're given the bare version, it can come with some suggestions, but you can also manage that. So add your own topic, and you go here and you can just put in your own topic, add a new one down the bottom, I think it is.
Mark, if you wanted to add more like metadata here, would that be, for instance, if you scroll up to the first section, Roy, our elder, might be interested in having some metadata on where it was recorded. Is it easy to add that an extra line, or will we have to engage eLearn Australia with a contract to sort of update a bit of a process?
Sarah might say something, but there's a notes section here, and this notes section comes up over the image. So here's where you could put that kind of data. We've put it here specifically. I mean, One Ear has been using it to give information about the images because we had quite a lot of information, but it also gave extra information about so the image was about a particular fruit, say, that was important, and it gave information about when it was collected and, you know, some cultural information. So in this notes section, you could really flesh that out. I think I'm right in saying that, One Ear and Sarah?
I'll just jump in and say that, yeah, I think it's probably good to use what's there. In the Manggarai version, that notes information shows over the image, but in this shell, it doesn't yet. But that might be something that comes out of this workshop, is that another metadata field is needed. And yeah, we could easily add that in.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, so the thing is, you could select a few topics because obviously a phrase doesn't just fit one topic. So you might want to say it comes up under different topics. I don't even know why we've got this exactly. It sort of was one of those things that hung around from when I first was looking at the database. I decided you want to know whether it's a phrase or a word. Maybe it's important, I'm not sure. Searchable tags is that, so let's just go here. When you type in a word, automatically the keywords are defined. So they're defined by a space. So whenever there's a space, it says they're all keywords. And in Manggarai, because the orthography has dashes, then if there's a dash, that's also a keyword because then it considers a morpheme as being one of the keywords. So that's kind of nice for Manggarai. Doesn't quite work out for other languages, but anyway, you presumably, if you wanted to say ok is going to be so you could do it manually. And then, so yeah, and the tags are where sometimes the keywords, it's, you know, you want something, people are likely to search on it. They might search on it to try and find that phrase, but it doesn't actually come up in the keywords. So you might think of another tag that could be useful, and then you can just put that in manually. Pronouns. So the linguistic keywords, really, honestly, I just put them in originally a long time ago at the start when I was doing the database, just because I could, because I'm a linguist, and they may or may not be useful. But, you know, in some community contexts, people really want to, you know, either they're really interested in that, or I know that there are a lot of contexts where people, that's what they've got. I mean, they've got all these, they've got a grammar which has got all this kind of linguistic stuff, and maybe by tagging it, this can just help them find. So they go on a grammar, oh my goodness, what's this thing? And that, if you tag all of the stuff with that, then it means that a community member could potentially look it up and go, oh, that's what it is, you know. So it can be used in that way, but it may or may not be useful for people. The little flag is really just to say it could be a work process. So that might be that someone puts it in and wants someone else to check it. And so the flag will come up and it means, could you check this? And then you can unclick the flag. And then if you go back, the last thing is that you can, there's a way of linking the phrases together. So to say, okay, these somehow go together. Is it because they're a conversation, or is it because they can form a longer text in some way? So you can put that together and put that together and add it. And so then when you go to your, I hope this is going to work. When you go to this section here and have a look, and you go here, oh, sorry. Okay, that's not the phrase I want. Anyway, I'm not going to spend time. You can muck around with that. It will come up in that section that you can make a phrase. So this is probably the least developed section of this resource. It's something we've kind of put to one side, and that's, you know, something we we're keen to work on more. But the main idea of it is that it's this idea of scaling. So, you know, you work at a word level, you work at a phrase level, you work at a text level. And this is really, so we can see that the word and phrase level can work well with this resource, but we wanted also to include the text level. So theoretically, you could start with a text, a bigger text, chunk it down into smaller parts for people to learn, but they could still have access to that larger text. So that's the thinking behind it. Janet, have you got any things that you'd like to say about the development of this tool?
Yeah, so just a couple of really quick comments. When you are working on an interface, what you're trying to do is capture the workflow that is most relevant and design the interface to make the things you're trying to do as easy as possible. So one way of thinking about it is you're looking for a really seamless integration between language as it's used or as it's been recorded into data formats that can then feed into your apps and then back into everyday life as seamless as possible. And really computer science and GUI design, graphical user interface design is not there yet, but that's the kind of thing we're looking for. And so your data in any technology like this is the key. How is it formatted to start with? How are you going to access it? Is it in a series of files or is it in a database? Quite often your data gets trapped in an app. And then when the app, as apps do, apps should be considered disposable. Your data is critical. Apps can be used, updated. Some might last a while, some not more than a couple of weeks. So it's really thinking about how the data feeds into the app is really critical. So what was interesting here was looking at Mark's workflow, and because he's a very skilled and creative teacher, he brought that into the way he was thinking about the language use. And because it's tied very tightly to how the community are currently learning and using language, and then what they wanted, you've got both those sides of it encoded into the Talk app. And so the Listen app was designed to make it as easy as possible to put that information in the form. So the kind of things you look at is the metadata. How is metadata added? How's it going to be stored? When Mark shows you the coloring is done through what's called markup. And markup is a really nice way to specify what colors, how you show the relationships. But markup is also notoriously easy to make mistakes, get things wrong, accidentally put the wrong colors in the wrong place and not even realize. And so one of the things that we started off right at the beginning looking at is how was Mark adding markup? Could he then see what he'd done in a very easy way? And the way it flips between entering the data and then immediately seeing what it will look like in the Talk app is a really seamless integration that is so quick and easy you wouldn't even notice you're doing it or realize that, you know, Sarah spent a lot of time thinking about how to do that. So when you are working with tech developers, there are a couple of things to be aware of. One is that there'll be things you want to do in 6 months' time that you're not even aware of now. Another is that you always want to add more bells and whistles, and that the more you add, the more difficult the design will be. And I guess the other thing is if you do something 3 times, you should be thinking about automating it, but thinking about what's the easiest and best way to do. I'm really interested in this whole area of what makes technology useful, how people use it. If people are interested in the design of these systems and how to generalize them, I'll put my email in the chat, and I'm interested to continue this conversation, certainly within this workshop, but also beyond the workshop as well.
Thanks so much, Janet. And can I just say that it was a lifesaver to have this tool, because previously it was a big spreadsheet that, you know, was done by hand, and I had to do it, and then I'd give it to Sarah, and Sarah had to, you know, it was a process that really wasn't sustainable. So this has been really, really helpful. We're a little bit over time, but it's okay. I realised that I miscalculated the numbers on the other side, so we've got some time anyway. So let's have a break and let's have some morning tea. We scheduled for that morning tea anyway. I think it was 20 minutes. So let's have 20 minutes anyway, and feel free in that time to chat to us, or, you know, whatever. There are some resources that Caroline, hang on, where did we put them, Caroline? We're going to put them in the chat. Just after this session, there are just some free resources that we will be talking about, and you might, I sort of mentioned them when I sent out the email. You might have already downloaded them, or if you haven't, we'll just put the links in the chat, and you might want to just download them. There's nothing scary. They're pretty easy to download, but they're just some free resources that might be useful or not. So if we take a 20-minute break, which means that we'll be back, let's say we'll be back at 11 o'clock. All right, we might actually get underway just so we get going. So Caroline has been organising you into groups. Do you want to just talk that through, Caroline, that side of it?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, we've set up 4 breakout rooms for the next session. We've done a default allocation of you 2 groups, but happy for you to head into another group where you see a friend or a collaborator or someone that you'd like to work with. So what's on screen is just a suggestion. Don't hop into the breakout room just yet though, because Mark's got a Google Drive link to share and instructions for what we're looking at next.
Yeah, great. So just let me get the... Just gonna get the link. Sorry. Find the document.
I put it in the chat to you earlier, Mark, if it's the right one.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. Let's do that. That'll be the same one. Thank you. Right up the top, isn't it? Google Drive. Yeah. So I'm just going to share that again. Make sure I share it to everyone. So that will take you to this machine. I'll share that as well. So that's going to take you to this interface here, or this Google Drive. So here is just the is a PDF of the slides from today, so that you can see that there are 4 groups, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you go into your whatever group, they're all the same. You'll find a group Google, so a spreadsheet that is, you can use together, and this is one of those ones that different people can write and contribute to. So I'm going to ask you just to sort of set up some topics, subtopics, potentially language function, target language phrase, English meaning, and word for word gloss. Now, to do that, there are some resources. So you've got this one, which is some is the thing I was talking about, which is from the research we did at Julkmingen. This is some of the things that they were wanting to say. And this is just what it was in Mangrai, and actually it turned out that it existed already. So here's the ones that we could already find. There's also this one here, which is Hungarian data. So I've just put it there in case you want to use it, but there's some, these are the ones that the English phrase, the Hungarian phrase, and then just, so I've made a word for word gloss because obviously you're not Hungarian speakers. If just for later, when you want to do the color coding, then you'll be able to use this here for the color coding. But just for the moment, you can just use that top line if you wanted to. But feel free to use any languages that you know and you want to, and or a mix. It doesn't really matter. And then that's for something for later. So with those. Yeah, so here also is some information. So this is also in terms of language function. This is just some language functions that might or might not be useful, and some of the topics that we used again for the Hungarian glossing. Okay, so with those resources, the task that we're going to ask you to do is to try and come up with a list of, just for now, topics, subtopics, maybe language function and the target phrase. And we're going to ask you to do that around these following. You can choose in your group from the following contexts. So these are scenarios. So it can either be, as we've said, this can be for a sort of Indigenous scenario, language revitalization, or it might well be a non-Indigenous context. So everyday communication, school routines, language, classroom language, public events, Indigenous rangers, non-Aboriginal workers, visitors to a community, for example. These are all topics that over time people have sort of expressed some kind of interest in. So what we'll do is ask you within your groups. So what we might do is now ask you to go to the to your breakout room, have a discussion, decide on which of these scenarios you think would be interesting to explore, and get started. So for this activity, we've sort of said it will finish up around 10. We originally said 10:50, so we're already over that. So let's just say, what do you reckon, Caroline?
About 11:20 New South Wales time. 11:20 to finish up this next bit.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so if you go to your groups now and then make some decisions, and you can get started on that
for about 15 minutes, and I'll screen share the group, Mark, if that's okay.
Yeah.
sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble joining the group. You just go to the breakout room button down the bottom.
Yes,
that's right. And if you go to where it says 0, it will turn into join, and you can click join.
Okay, it's being a bit funny now. It's just sort of the menu's blank.
Okay, I can probably assign you if it's really not working. Wanyuma?
Yeah, that'd be great. Actually.
Try, yeah.
Yeah, I was in 4, I think.
Where is the list of the groups and the people? Can't see that.
Yeah, no, I screen shared it before. Hop into any group that you'd like. There's really no issue.
There's no one in room 4.
So Wanyama, do you want to go into room 4?
Yeah, well, if someone else is in there, yeah.
Here you go. I'll pop you in 2.
All right.
1. Here you go.
Thanks.
Caroline, could you put me in a room as well? I'm having trouble getting.
Yep, sure.
in.
Who's speaking? Sorry,
James.
Yep.
Thanks.
Hi, Caroline. You're going to have to do the same with me. Sorry.
That's all right. No worries. We were trying to offer choice, but it's clearly not entirely working. Enjoy group 3, Sarah.
Yeah, same here. I'll have to get put in.
Yep, that's Josie, right?
Yep.
Anyone.
Yep.
Anyone. Enjoy. Thank you.
You right, Anna, 1 year?
Yeah, I was just having a look because I didn't actually see my name, our name in any group.
It's okay. Caroline will just put you in a group if that's all right.
Yeah.
So I'm just seeing where there's space.
Good idea, yeah. And you can come in and out too a bit, I guess, if you wanted, but thanks for being here today, Sarah. That's really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Fine, it's interesting.
Mark, did we point them to the scenarios?
I'm just wondering if I had showed it, but can I screen share into the?
You can broadcast a message in if you want to do that. If you go into breakout rooms in progress and down the bottom, it says broadcast message to all. I just told them they had 15 minutes, but if you wanted to highlight the scenarios.
Can I cut and paste?
Join the breakout rooms themselves and then share your screen once in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you could hop in one at a time.
I'll just hop. Do you want to go into 1? I'll go into 2. Do you want to go into 3, Sarah? And we'll just let them know what the
scenarios are.
Can you put me in number 2? Anna's in number 1, so I thought we'd split up to help if they got any questions.
Yeah, I can put you in 2, Josie.
What are the scenarios again?
Yeah, where are they, Mark? I just thought it might be easier to do a broadcast and then hop in.
Yeah. So with the broadcast, can I cut and paste it in?
Yeah. There's a character limit though, so.
Okay. Sorry, just let me get that. Where are we? Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's a good solution.
Which room do you want me to go into, Mark?
You go into 1.
I'll go into 3.
And I'll go into 2, and then I'll jump into 4, or at one point. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And yeah, we've got about another 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Can you see me? Carolyn can tell us.
Possibly. What's the question?
I guess we've selected everyday conversation, and we were just thinking, should we break that? That's the topic, the heading topic, and if we break that down to greetings, introductions, and we work out other. Hang on, I just have to go.
That's perfect. And it's a brainstorming exercise where you're thinking about kinds of topics, subtopics, language functions. Maybe down to the level of phrases, and you're using that Google Drive spreadsheet to put some ideas in. So potentially anyone could put some ideas in, but it's meant to be a group kind of process. Does that make sense?
Caroline, could you explain a little bit more about how you're defining language function?
It's really flexible, Annie, so don't feel constrained by any definitions whatsoever. What we're thinking about, so your topic was everyday, and a subtopic might be greetings or something. So a function might be saying hello, another function might be saying goodbye.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, so just kind of breaking it down each time. Does that help?
So will you bring that up and share it, Caroline?
It might be a good idea if someone in this group would like to sort of pop it up and then maybe scribe. That's probably a good visual way to do it together.
So we've got the ability to do that, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes
If you go to that Google Drive link and then someone does a screen share of that, and yeah, that would be my suggestion.
So who would like to do that? Who'd like to have a go?
I can do the screen share.
Okay.
Can I? Where is? Maybe that was too ambitious. Show all windows. Hang on. Here we go. So do you want the we want the spreadsheet, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. Oh.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, I'm going.
Yeah, this is exactly right, everyone. So then, yeah, sort of going down each time into more and more detail as you go from left to right. Yeah, and it's just a brainstorming exercise to sort of explore the potential of this approach. So there's no right or wrong answers. Have fun.
Oh yeah. So.
And when you get to target language phrase, anyone can chip in anything at all. So you could add in something from a language or a dialect that you know that's just a bit different from English, from sort of the standard English meaning to make sense of it. But yeah, you could have a mixture of languages in here and that's totally fine. So you've probably got, you know, like another 5 minutes or so to have a bit of fun and chat amongst yourselves. I'm going to head out and head back to the main room, but I'll pop back in again shortly.
Thanks, Caroline.
Caroline. So I guess one of the things that's interesting about this is that
Hey, Mark, that was good. I sorted group one is all good.
Yeah.
I told them they have another 5 minutes or so.
So we've got everyone in 3 groups. That's
we
good.
do. Yep.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting thing, is that choice is it's probably tricky. Yeah.
That's okay.
Something
We'll
to be
make the
said for
report back.
locking it
The
down.
report back's a bit quicker anyway. So
Yeah, true.
have we
Any,
been into each of the groups so far?
Nadia's just gonna, so Sarah, I think she's been going around, which is great. So it's great that it was shared, the scenarios were shared on chat, so that
So
that's something
one
I
is
learned
doing
today.
everyday conversation.
Yeah, I didn't know that they could actually see chat in their breakout rooms, but they can,
Oh, yeah,
so
good.
that's good. We could potentially.
I might hop into group 2 and see how they're going.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think welcome to or acknowledgement of country would be another important thing to get out of the way early. I think that'd be vocab that's probably quite relevant to a very broad range of contexts that people are going to be in.
Yeah.
Hi guys, Caroline here. Just thought I'd jump in and see if I could be helpful. One way some of the other groups are finding it useful is if one person screen shares that Google Drive spreadsheet.
I'm just pulling it up. Thanks.
Oh,
Caroline.
great. Okay, that sounds
I'm
good.
having
Alison.
some internet and microphone issues, but I think.
No, that's it. And I'm here to help clarify the activity and answer any questions. So.
Thank you. Can everyone see? If I pulled up the wrong thing, I probably have, haven't I?
I can see Hungarian data. I think if we pull up the spreadsheet, that's what you want.
The spreadsheet, you're
Yep,
absolutely
yep,
right.
so the
All
number 2 there.
righty, let me.
Yep.
All right, so now that I'm sharing my screen, I won't see any chat things. So if I'm doing anything silly or my mic's on and you can hear my partner listening to the ashes, just shout out to me.
I'm seeing a bit of a black screen. I don't know. Oh, here it comes.
It is taking a bit of time to load. We're having some internet issues.
Probably because you've got about 100 tabs.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm used to having a work computer and a sort of study computer, but now I'm on leave to do this summer scholarship. It's all on the one computer, and it makes me sad having all the tabs open. All right, so the topic we said was everyday communication. Was that it?
You can do whatever you like. Pick anything you like.
All right. My thought
this
is
a brainstorming session, so there's no right or wrong answers.
Correct.
But as you can see, if you move from left to right, you're sort of breaking it down into more and more detail.
Mm-hmm. Well, my thought is that would subtopics be greetings and farewells, or would subtopics be more?
No, it could be anything like that. Greetings, farewells, making excuses, giving apologies, could be anything, yeah. But then, breaking it down into more and more detailed things as you move to the right with the language function.
Would perhaps then greetings and farewells sit closer in language function, and subtopics might be kind of place of
It's entirely up to you what the scope is that you want to include within everyday communication. So that's the idea, is that this is quite flexible.
What do others think about keeping it as subtopics or jumping it over to language function?
I think whatever makes sense to us for the purposes of this exercise.
All right, I'm going to make an executive call then, unless anyone else has an issue.
What about eating and sleeping as like topics, or some sort of category somewhere?
Yeah.
I mean, subtopic probably. Yeah.
Subtopic, meals.
So with the language function, is that just like an even? Is it a subtopic or?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's right. So it's meant to be. So if meals was
Probably
a
like
subtopic,
greeting.
you could have, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say like greetings and farewells and things like that. They could go under one subtopic of useful phrases or everyday communication, or like our main topic, everyday communication, but like salutations, or I don't know, something.
Yeah,
that's
or
good.
just even just greetings / farewells.
Yeah.
So is it designed, Caroline, such that say you have a subtopic meals and eating, and then you have all the relevant language functions, say you've got 5 rows. Does this second subtopic then have to be kind of sit below?
Yep, that's the idea, because ultimately for each row, there's a target phrase that belongs to a language function and belongs to a subtopic and belongs to a topic.
Right.
Yep.
And do you need to say you drag this down so everything needs to be populated, or can you merge all these?
That's fine. That's fine for what we're doing right now. It's fine.
Cool.
This is just conceptually exploring what you could do. And you can put anything in the target language phrase. It could be from any language. It could be a mix of languages, dialects, anything you like.
Arriving. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not asking you to come up with a polished thing for any one particular language, just to sort of think through how you could use this. Does that help, guys?
Just as an idea, like in the Motto app, we have like the main, what do you call it?
Topic?
Main topic.
Just
We've got who are you, family, around, camp, body, and then say we go into who are you. So the subtopics are about you, how do you feel, what do you like?
That's great, Josie.
I like you.
So if that gives you a little bit more of an idea, or around camp, sub, whatever that word was, food and drink, getting around, work, school, sport, getting ready.
Doesn't do we only have one main topic, or can we have multiple main topics there?
Multiple.
Whatever you like.
Another good one for around family would be like just the names for members of your family as well.
Yeah. We haven't got any recordings of that. I suppose that's why we haven't done that yet, but that's on the to-do list. Yeah.
Maybe
hey James, I think
sorry, Josie, you've broken up for me.
You're at Butler. I think I was just saying, I think I know just digitally.
Oh, you think you know James through his bachelor?
Yeah. Hey, Josie. I think we've been
Is that the right James?
Yeah, that's me. Yep.
Cool.
We've been talking to John, hey, about those tapes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's me. Nice to talk to you, sort of more
cool.
in person.
Thanks for directing me to Karen.
Oh, good. Hopefully you can get that organized with Karen.
True.
Looks like you guys are away and exploring options here, so I'll leave you to it. Looks great, guys.
Cool.
Talk soon.
Yeah.
So anyone, any sort of questions when the rubber sort of hits the road a little bit?
So Mark, I'm just back out of group 2 who are going well, and just wondered if it's a good idea for us to broadcast a sort of time remaining or anything like that to all of the groups.
I've closed the room, so they've got about 40 seconds left.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. All right.
Kicked out.
All good.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah, for keeping us on track. Of course, this is an endless process. There are, language is a big thing, and you might just want to use it for a really sort of small part of language rather than some particular purpose. Okay. No, that's not the one. Okay, so quickly, I'm just going to now go through some other elements, and then you can go back in and start trying to work with those. So I can share the screen. Okay. All right, so the first part is sourcing audio. Obviously you can, so we work with archival material because that's what that context was, but clearly you can work the other way. I mean, you might just start straight up with speakers, so you can record a speaker with a phone or some other device. And I think an important principle is ensure the highest quality initially for archiving and metadata. So if you're going to record something, really good to have the highest quality. And if you're going to use an iPhone, it's going to be usually M4A, but WAV is generally one of the higher quality ones, and there are others, but okay. But then the thing about this app is that it only works with MP3s, and the reason for that is to keep the size down. So it's got a 100 kilobyte limit so that the whole thing doesn't blow out, since it's going to be sitting on your phone. So you need to convert convert it to an MP3, and one of the simplest ways, or one way to do that, and there are many ways, but this is one that you could use. Actually, I'm not going to go into it. You can explore it yourself. So this is just a link to an online audio converter. You just chuck it in and it does it for you and spits out an MP3. Of course, the other way you can get audio is from archival sources, and that could be iAccess, that could be Paradisec, it could be people have it sitting in the community, etc. But that comes with the difficulties we've talked about, is that often it's not, archival data can be recorded for all sorts of purposes, and it may or may not be really useful in a communicative sense. So for me, that's a really interesting exploration. We were lucky enough to have data that was already in that framework. How do you go about using data that's recorded for some completely different purpose? That's much more of an open question. Okay, so then you want to be able to edit those, and the simplest way is with Audacity. Many of you may well have already been using that. It's a really simple tool that I've used with people at Jukmingen who had no training or experience in that tool, and were pretty easy, quickly able to pick it up. Josie will tell you that she was able to pick it up pretty easily. So yeah, it's pretty intuitive. So you can use Audacity to trim files. So sometimes, it's more than 100 kilobytes, but when you look at it, when you put it in Audacity, you realize actually that there's a bit of time on the end. So just trimming it down can make it fit a bit more nicely. Of course, you can use Audacity also to change the format as well, get it into an MP3 format. Although Audacity doesn't do all, like if it's an AIF file, for example, it won't convert it. So there are some limits. You can also use Audacity to chunk longer recordings. So obviously, either when you have archival material, it's obviously a long recording and you only want some bits out of it, then you need to put it into Audacity and then start to export those specific bits that you want. Okay. So I've put down that you can use ELAN. Some of you will know ELAN. It's quite a complicated thing. I've put this a download for ELAN. Don't worry about that now. But you can do this as a batch. So you can, if you record them, when I did the Hungarian, it was just recording them straight up. They just said the phrases one after the other, and then you could segment them in one go. Again, I'm not going to talk about that, but in your folders, there are these links which take you to a YouTube, which will explain it. And even I could do it by just looking at the YouTube. So that's must be pretty obvious then. So the images, of course, take your own photo. You can repurpose older community resources, which what we did at Jukmingen, again, archives. There are some shareable resources. The only one I know of is Palmer Moves, and I'm not sure even how accessible that is, but there are some of you would know better than me. The online search, so for the Hungarian one, we used we looked online, and you've got to make sure that they're royalty-free images, but you can do that if you're using Google. I'm going to show you you can also use free clip art, things like that. You can use Adobe, it has royalty-free images, but you've got to have an account, and that costs money. But Sarah told us about this one, Creative Commons. So if you go to Google and you want to search for the picture for river, you go to images, you go to tools, and then you click on Creative Commons license, and it'll show you all the images that are royalty free, and you can select from those. So it's hard to get images, obviously, that fit a phrase. It's much easier, obviously, for a word, but you could just take a keyword out of the phrase and use the image for that. That's fine. You can edit. So again, there's a size limit of 100 kilobytes for the images. So you want to make sure you save it in the smallest form, which is a JPEG. And again, it still might be too big, so you can edit and resize. Again, here's a tool, Pixlr, that you can use. You can use Photoshop, but that's expensive if you may or may not have it. And that can help you trim it down and put it in a format that makes it a bit smaller. You can also combine images. So these two have been combined from two images. You can use, for example, Pixlr, but you can also just use PowerPoint just by grouping images. And so you can make an image that perhaps responds to different elements of the phrase. Just organization, it's important to organize the data into, label it and make sure you know what's what and what's where. So I've set that up. The way I've set it up in the folders that you can see on the Google Drive is just how I've done it by labeling. You can have a look at that, but just so long as you're clear what's where, so you keep a good track of it, and then it makes it easier to upload into the tool. All right, just let's quickly to the minimal glossing. So just quickly, the points are: it's not meant to be comprehensive. It's meant to facilitate understanding of key functions of some key grammatical features, transparent terminology. There's a focus on function. What does it do? Rather than, it's not really about deep structural concepts. So things like subject equals doer, object equals done to. So this can help you avoid terms such as transitive, intransitive, nominative, accusative, ergative, all that sort of stuff. You don't need to mark zero morphemes. Linguists want to do that to show that even though there's nothing, there is actually something because it's doing a function. But for a learner, certainly for me anyway, we've found that if it's not there, then you can accept that you just need to put that word. You don't need to add anything. So here in this phrase, for example, theoretically this is an object. So if there's a zero object marker, but no one. I mean, you don't need to know that. You just need to know if you stick that word there, it's going to be good, but you've got to put this one on to make it a subject. Of course, things like ergative, transitivity, it's complicated, but anyway, we can discuss that at another point if anyone's interested. So the point of color is to track the relations between grammatical elements and meaning. The elements and translation don't always exactly line up, as we saw. So sometimes two elements are separated and sometimes they're separated, but they make up one word. So we think of just in English, I saw the whole thing through. So saw through is kind of like the verb, if you like, or run of the mill. In Mangarai, so that the word to throw is yirwar, but you get yirkangawars with these co-verbs or etc. So you want to be able to tell people that actually the throw part is both of these. You need both together because you can't just say, oh, year. You can't identify what year exactly means. It's not like you can separate these two things. So color can sort of help with that. And where luckily, as I pointed out, Mangarai has these hyphens anyway, that makes it a bit clearer. The color categories is kind of interesting. So obviously with color, you've got a limited amount of contrastiveness. You can't have 100 different colors all going, it's problematic. So Ben Foley from Queensland University, we set him this problem. How many colors can we realistically have? And he came up with about 12 to 13. And that's what he hit the 12 colors here he came up with. We did actually explore what if about using colorblind palettes, and there are 3 different kinds of colorblindness. That was completely, that limited the choices so much, it was really too tricky. You can add things like bolding and italics. So they can be used together with coloring to increase the categories. And the advantage of these is that they can also show, sometimes you have one grammatical element that has a couple of functions. So in this case here, this indicates, so bolding, it's verbal. So it's part of the verb, but it is it's a pronoun ending, I, and at the same time, it's also in Hungarian, you have a definite and indefinite conjugation. So this is indicating that it's a definite conjugation. So there are 3 bits of information that can actually be indicated using 3 separate categories, if you like. So in your palette, when you go back to your palette, will show you where you can look and you can find the, you'll find the explanation of these. And if you look in your folders, you'll find both the Mangarai palette and the Hungarian sort of categories. And you can see that the categories I've chosen for the two different languages are quite different, because obviously there are different things you need to focus on. So for example, in Hungarian, the verb, the default root form of the verb is a third person. And so I actually, what was I going to say? That? Anyway, let's not worry about that. But the point is that the decisions you make, there's two things. One is that it's going to vary from language to language. Secondly, is that you're limited. So you can't have every little nuance that you would like. You need to make choices. Just to say that the Hungarian data, I've just given you the glossing here, just so that if you want to try that for the color coding, this is what will tell you what the bits mean, and you use that together with the categories that you have access to, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay, yeah, that's just that. So I'll just quickly go to the tool and just show you what you're going to do with this coloring if you want to have a go at it. Just let me stop the share.
I've just shared the link and the passwords, Mark.
Yeah, do you want to? Yeah, do
no, you go. You go.
Oh, okay. Could you do that just while I'm showing this? Is that possible? Because I'm just going to show the general one, our presenter one. Where's that?
You show what you need to show, Mark. I was just facilitating the groups to access after this in the interest of time.
No, that's great. If you could put those links in the chat while I'm just showing that, is that possible?
I've put the link to the listen and talk interface that they need for activity 2, right?
And just people know that, and all they have to know is that if
you
they're
pull
group
down
1,
from the drop down group 1, and then your password is group 1, lowercase, no space.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So where am I going to? I'm going to presenter. That's what I want. Sorry. Okay. So here's where you go for the coloring up. So once you've got your data, so basically when we're going to be working, some people are going to choose to be to do the, so only one person can access this link at a time. So the person who's going to put the data into this interface, maybe in the group, you just choose one person to do that, who'll share their screen with the rest of you so that you can all see what they're doing. But meanwhile, other people can be thinking about images, other people can be thinking about the audio, and so you kind of share the tasks around the group, if that's, so you just kind of work together. And then one person will upload, you know, so if you create a folder within the folder you're working on, you can share images there, or you can use the Hungarian recorded data or the images that are already provided, just to sort of play with. So where you go, in order to, so here, for example, here's where the Hungarian template is. So this tells you what the categories are and what they mean, right? So that's built in. You can manage that yourself. Oh, okay. Let's go back again. You can manage that yourself. So you clicked on that wheel, and you can actually change this, right? You can input stuff yourself, and you can change the colors if you want to. So you can change the hex codes here and put in whatever colors you want to. So yeah, you can make up your own, you know, your own palette.
And it's also, right, Mark, entirely possible to use this app without using the glossing at all. So you can
absolutely,
this is entirely optional. Yep.
Yeah. So this is you know,
if you just want phrases and translation,
yep,
go for it.
So in order to actually do it, it's simplest to do it in this screen, although you can do it from the other one. You just click on the colors and they come up here when you hover. So if it's the, you know, here you want to go to oblique case, Anglia, oh, actually, no, I don't want the oblique case. I want this case, locative, Angliaba 2. So once you've clicked it, every time you do that now, it will just keep click, keep coloring up. If you make a mistake, you just highlight it and go to none, and it'll go back to black. And yeah, so you can only color in these two screens. You can't do it here, for example, because the English meaning you don't want colored up. And so as soon as you color things, was it? It's going to be a pronoun, wherever that is. Then you can go back and have a look and just see what it looks like. Okay, it's going to be painful. That's okay. You can go back here. You can see what it looks like, and it will color up for you. I don't think there's anything else I need. So you can, really just play around with that as you see fit. I don't think there is anything else I need to say. Is there anyone? Any questions?
No, so I think the overall instructions, right, Mark, are for people to hop back into their breakout rooms and to build on the conceptual work that you did in the last activity, to have a go at using the interface to make a bit of a resource, and you can preview by clicking on that eye.
Yeah, so what's the time frame we have for that now?
15 minutes, how does that sound? What do you reckon? Because we want to preserve enough time at the end for Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah, so just have a go at seeing what you can do, and so we'll just stop it there.
Yep, and if anyone wants me to add you to a group, if you're having trouble joining a group, let me know.
The button at the bottom where I clicked to join my breakout room before seems to have disappeared.
Okay, Alison, which group were you in before? Which
group 2?
Group 2. Okay. See if I can
me too.
Yeah,
I think it might have disappeared for all of us. Yeah.
I can't see the breakout room either.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
no breakout room thing.
Okay, so I'll just have a look here. I've recreated 3 breakout rooms. Hopefully you can choose them. Is that working?
Nothing yet.
Oh, they've come up now.
There we go.
I don't know why that didn't load properly before, Mark, but it seems to be working now. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think it's when you're sharing a screen too, sometimes it doesn't behave how it should. So,
okay.
I've noticed that sometimes it doesn't do what it should do.
All right. So the plan is to come back at what time?
About 13 minutes time. Does that sound right?
Okay.
What do you reckon, Mark?
Well, let's say 5 past, and then.
Okay, but are they going to share anything of what they've done, or?
Should we just leave that and maybe
just leave that?
I don't
maybe.
think we need to share it.
No, I don't think so either. No.
I think we'll just leave that, and then you jump in, Sarah Bock, at 5 past, and say what you need to say.
Yep. So they have 18 minutes from now.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go into room 3.
Okay, I'll go into
Caroline, sorry.
Yep.
Can't get into breakout rooms again.
Yeah, sure. Room 3, was it, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think the important part is that people will have questions and things that they want to think about because it came up. So that's probably more important than talking about it.
Okay, I might hop into room 2 because room 1's got Janet Wiles already. So.
Yep, great. Thanks. Yeah, that's. I think that's enough time. That's good.
Hungarian data codal workshop.
Just popping in to check that you're all okay and if I can help.
I think we're doing okay so far.
Yeah, good. Okay. Alison, you've got the link to the interface. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you on Facebook? Nope. And that one goes in there.
Yeah, you just want that second line on it. You have Facebook on. Yep.
Oh, yep, yep.
Yep. And then it's that little pencil icon over to the right that you use to do more details if you want. Further down under action.
Oh, yep.
Yep.
This one.
Yep. That's where you can upload an image or some audio. So it's an alternative interface that's just giving you a little bit more ability to add metadata and things. Okay, you're away, guys. That's great. I'll go check on the other room.
Easy, we can just and everyone will be able to see, and here it is. Excellent.
Are you planning on making digital dictionaries?
Yeah, we have a few already. They were done before I came back on board, like app style dictionaries. And to be honest, I think they're next to useless. I don't think many people have been using them.
Yeah, right.
Single word learning is useful at all. And I don't think that literacy-based resources are that useful for our communities either. There's only a very small group of people that have received bilingual literacy education. So something like this starting off, it's phrase-based, you know, and then the conversation capabilities of it are much more in line with what our community members have been requesting. Yeah, I'm really happy. I think we'll definitely be able to use something like this.
Yeah, the thing that we really like are the pictures. See that?
Yeah. Oh, you got the bush foods in there.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
They look great.
Yeah.
So it's that pencil icon over to the right of
Oh,
each
yeah.
row of the action. That's where you can upload images or audio files or extra metadata.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, looks like you're away. Looks like you're going well, guys.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if, I mean, I don't know how easy it is, but say if someone's working on this stuff and they're actually a speaker of the language, if you could just record straight in, just hit a record button.
Yes.
That's true, although doing it the other way makes sure that there's a bit of a discipline around making sure that you get a really high quality
That's true.
audio.
Yeah.
And that you know where it's gone. Yeah.
The reason why it didn't end up in this interface for recording is because on every device, it's done slightly differently. And so your phone already is quite a good recording device. So the idea is you record on your phone and then it's one extra step, but it means that this is, you know, 100 times simpler. And the same thing, use your camera on your phone rather than photos in, you know, directly into this. So it's a really nice suggestion, but it's just a little bit, the software makes it hard to do just at the moment. Yeah.
They're doing it separately also makes archivists very happy.
Yep, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
That issue of like it's.
Okay, looks like you're having fun, guys. I'll leave you to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Caroline.
I have it here.
And
Can you see it here?
Yeah.
oh yeah, okay.
Like the T stands for past probably, and M is first person.
Hang on. You've taken over my computer.
Sorry, you can go again.
Felt like the CIA.
I don't think that's quite.
I've been hacked. Where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I going? Who am I? Where am I going?
Yeah, so me finished the school.
I don't. So have I lost? Can you see my screen still?
No.
No.
Ah, okay. That's what's going on here.
Sorry for hacking you.
I haven't been hacked for a while, so yeah, it's a bit of a shock, but I'm over it. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go. Who's going to give it to me?
I just put it in the chat too.
Thanks, man. Me finished the school object 16-year-old on. Makes perfect sense. Okay, next. Okay, so me is a.
So we can only see the spreadsheet, Stephen.
Oh, you can't see.
We can only see the first two columns of the spreadsheet.
Yes.
We can't see the
Because
tool at all.
Oh, really? Let me reshare. I should never have put my hand up for this. Where are we? Group 3 spreadsheet, but this one is what you need. Is that better?
Yeah.
See the tool, but you can't see the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay, well, that makes more sense. Okay, so what do you want done now?
Colors.
Also, have you clicked on that little pencil icon yet for any of these entries? Because that's where you can add an audio or an image. So just to alert you to that.
Ah,
yeah.
okay.
So that's where the opportunity to add in some more stuff.
That's the very important one. Yeah.
And then if you go back to where you were, if you click on that little eye next to any of the things that you've done so far, you'll get a preview of it.
Oh, yep. We've
See
done
under
that.
action, there's that little eye. Have you played with that one yet?
Yes, we did that.
Oh, good. Okay.
But we didn't do the edit. Okay, so what color do you want this? I assume it's a pronoun for me, I. First person.
That's color 13.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Okay. And then finish is a verb. Finished.
So verb is color 1.
And do we want to bold it? He was bolding it for some reason. As is tense there. So let's do another
3.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I think.
As is the pronoun, isn't it?
Yeah, that's I. That's.
Oh dear. So what color?
Probably just again do the 13 or whatever it was, the purple one.
In this word, phrase, text that could just follow that. For some of them.
Yeah. So I think one of the interesting things about this is kind of set up around conversations. If you were thinking about having the same information accessible for, say, a seasonal calendar, you might think, rather than trying to completely adapt what's here, just think, okay, what would you like it to look like if you had a seasonal calendar app? that access this same, so you have the same lesson and then put all the information in, but you can either pull it out for the conversation or you could pull it out. Your seasonal calendar description at the top could then feed into your conversation. So what we're thinking of is an ecosystem of, we call them interoperable. So bits of language, bits of conversation can go from your dictionary to your encyclopedia to your discussion around plants. We're not there yet, but it's sort of the next thing we'd be interested in looking at. So if you were going to have a conversation around a seasonal calendar, you might put in sentences around the flowers and a different sentence around the fruit and a different sentence around the nut, and then maybe they would be linked within this. Would that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking in relation to that about the like the original recording when that's made. If, I mean, the way that it's the ones we're doing have been done, it's the language worker sitting down and just writing it out, but it could be a language worker
Okay, now where the heck is this thing? So maybe I have to download it.
Yeah, you would.
Download. Done. And choose file. Downloads. There it is. Check that out. And it's MP3, which is what we want, I'm assuming.
Beautiful.
There it is.
Yes, you can add the image as well.
Um,
And the same, I guess. Yeah, the window.
there we go, guys. We're rock and rolling. Now, you wanted an image. What kind of image did you want?
I've sent the link for the image as well. So the same, the first one itself, the I used to let school one.
No, whoops, wrong one. Hang on, get him in the wrong place. Where did you send the link?
The second
there it
link in the
is.
chat. Yeah.
The Akfodge. This must be really boring to watch. How are we going for time?
Going well, Stephen. I think Mark will probably close the rooms in about 3 or 4 minutes' time. But it looks like you've made some progress and sussed out lots of the features, so that's good.
Yep. Well, this would probably be easy for you guys, but this is actually a really great pressure cooker of growth here. So let's
actually upload the image.
Yeah, the image.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I got to choose it and upload it. That would make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. So should I be pressing? Yeah, I see. Copy. Are you still at school? Up, open, upload. It's the little things. Little things. Now let's preview this bad boy. Wow. Look what we did.
And you're hearing that audio, and maybe if
sorry, I am.
Yeah, that's good. That's all right. It's just probably back when you screen shared, there was that little thing to share audio, but it's cool if you can hear it. That's something.
Okay. So
Right.
I think we've explored the functionality, the basic functionalities here. Was that what we were supposed to do? Anything else? We can do color. We can put it up there. We can upload sound and image. We can say fudge.
Can we link conversations?
You can try. So if you go to the two little speech bubbles talking to each other for one of the phrases, this is the under action, the second one. This is the least developed part of it. Based on what you've got in there, you can add extra phrases so that you can have part one interlocking with the next phrase, part two interlocking with the next.
I guess like in the select one, yeah, we can select it. Yeah.
And then I think when you're back at that entry, you'll have the ability to see those options sort of reflected, but it is a little underdeveloped.
Where is that?
I think it might have been in the search term one.
You click on that speech bubble now, it should come up. So
I see.
I mean, you can go there and
Yeah.
you can click on that eye icon and it should preview the conversation that you sort of put in. So
Yeah,
there's
a little
that
chat bubble. Yeah.
There's a chat. Yeah, that's the conversation.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Okay, guys, that's good. Any other functionalities?
I think that's pretty good, Sarah. We're about on track for going back, aren't we? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Mark's just called us back. Okay.
Okay,
Great work, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool.
Teamwork.
So in the interest of time, we won't do the presentation as we discussed, but I'm going to ask Sarah to, hang on, I'll just wait 6 seconds, 5. Okay, just in the interest of time, we're not going to do the sort of presentation side of things. Hopefully you all had a good experience. But what we will do is leave that you can have access to those databases for another, I don't know, what do you reckon, Sarah, a few days, a week, just so you can keep playing. Obviously, after a certain period of time, we're going to change that, but maybe a week, is that all right? Is that fair enough, Sarah?
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Yeah, so you can keep trying it out. And download anything you want from the Google Docs site. But now I'm going to ask Sarah just to talk to you about if you were interested in taking this on and setting something up. Oh, I'm sorry, my camera's not on. Setting something up, then what are the logistics? Oh, we might have just lost Sarah. Crucial moment. While Sarah's, no, you're right. We're just having trouble hearing you.
Yeah.
You've sort of frozen.
Oh,
you're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, your screen's frozen, so maybe you could turn that off. Yeah, oh, there you are. Good. No?
No, is that what?
You're sort of coming and going. Are there any questions just quickly while we might?
Mark, with the color.
So sorry, just before you go, so Josh is suggesting we all turn our cameras off just to help. So maybe if we do that, and then we'll, yeah. Sorry?
Sorry, I was just asking with the color coding, maybe you already mentioned this, but is there a way, like if you systematically code, you know, all the locatives with green or something like that, is there a way that then you could, if someone wanted to see all the instances of that, that you could sort of, the user can get that information, or not really?
No, I think I even, Janet might be able to talk to that, but I thought that would be a cool thing, but I'm not sure machines can't read color, can they? Well, could they read the coding behind it? Probably, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely, that's something that is possible, but we haven't put that in this version yet. But
you could search off the basis of the text, right? Off the actual ending or the term locative if you had coded that up.
Yeah, I think that's a cool idea, though. I like it. There was also another question about batch putting it in batches, like the data batch input, and we had also talked about that, and that's not something that we have done yet, but is potentially on the cards.
And potentially on the cards could it batch editing from Elan, like, or would you be looking at like Excel probably?
Well, anything you can use to import, like we could set up a, you know, CSV file or a spreadsheet or a template, and then that could be put into the database. Yeah, we haven't done any bulk uploading yet, but that's obviously something that we could look into as well.
So in terms of the design functionality, what you really try and do with something like this is have a single way. So the CSV, the comma separated, is a really standard way of interacting. So what you'd want to do is export from ELAN or any other form into CSV, and then from CSV read it into the Listen app or the Listen system. So so you think about creating a pipe between all your different programs, and what you'd write is new pipes rather than trying to change the main program every single time.
Sorry, Jeanette, are you saying that you would then have to have a defined tier system in Elan to then be able to do that importation process? Or are you saying that no, you'd be able to, you know, have whatever Elan tier structure you have, and then you'd be able to do some coding to translate it into a way that could be imported? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So ELAN has a lot of functionality that Listen doesn't, and Listen has functionality that ELAN doesn't. So what you want is to have something sits in the middle, a piece of code that looks at the whatever structure you've got in ELAN, pulls out the pieces that you want to go in. So if you have some knowledge ahead of time that this is what you want to do, you might set up ELAN in a certain way. But if you've already got ELAN files, you might not be able to get everything that you use in ELAN into the system, but you might be able to get some aspects of it. And so that would be a small research project in its own right, to look at how you use ELAN, how Sarah is setting up the read, and then what makes sense in terms of transferring across. And it's sensible to think of that as a separate little piece of code, so that as ELAN changes, every time ELAN changes, you don't have to change the main program. You just change your little bit of a pipe, and that's all.
Yeah, that would be the end goal, to create a pipe using Python or something like that to connect the two systems. But at the moment, I guess you could export the information from ELAN to a CSV file, so that generic data file, and then use that to import into this tool. But I'll just jump in and just sort of explain that. So this project came about from the Mungarai app, as you know, Mark has been talking about. But now I guess we've got this tool, which is like an input tool, and then the preview tool of the data. We've got the data, the input tool, and then the data, and then the preview output tool. And I guess what we're really interested in is to see what other things that could be used for. So what are the purposes, contexts? People have talked about, you know, seasonal calendars or using pronunciation guides, or so that's been really interesting to hear about. And I guess I just want to jump in and say, if anyone wants to take any of these ideas further, then we could work together to make that happen and explore those kind of options. So I guess the next kind of 5-10 minutes, if anyone has any questions about how that could happen, then that'd be great to hear those questions and just quickly talk about that.
Could you just before that, could you just give us a sense of, it presume like this is now, it's a freely available tool, so someone could grab it. And my view is that working together with the app developer is the surest way of keeping the thing on track. But presumably, so if someone were to work with you, what roughly are the parameters of the costs, and what are the sort of
steps? Yeah.
Okay, so we have this code, that's the shell code, and that's the output code, and that they're freely available. Like, we can share those files with you. You do need somewhere to put them, so you need somewhere to host them. So we could be involved in that process with you to host those files, or we could facilitate the hosting of those files on a different, like on your organization's server or something like that. But to keep it very accessible, we've kind of come up with a structure where if you want to explore using these tools for your own project, we could set up a instance of this tool for your project with your own login and password, and you can share that with anyone that you would like to contribute to that project. And we could put that on our server for 5 years, you know, up to 500 megabytes of files, so quite a lot of data for $1,000. So that would be 500 setup and 500 hosting. So that could be a way to get a project off the ground and just explore using it. If you'd rather take the files and put them on your own server, then we can send you the link, and then you would probably need a developer to connect those things up on your server. But yeah, we could send you the like the instructions to how to do that.
For a complete IT noob, when you talk about a server, what exactly do you mean?
Okay, so a server is, so basically it's somewhere to house your files. So you know how you've got files on your computer locally, you might open a Word document, save it to your computer. But if you're sharing it on the internet, you need somewhere like in the cloud, or, you know, somewhere online to put your files. So these files need to go somewhere so that other people can access them. So they could be on your own computer, but then you wouldn't be able to share them with other people. So does that make sense?
Yeah, so like Dropbox and Google Drive and cloud are other types of servers?
Yeah, so they're more like cloud storage, but you'd need like a, you know, when people have websites, that it's usually on a web server. So you need you need somewhere that hosts your files. So you need a web host, basically. So like, yeah.
Universities and organizations usually have a server, so you would put it on their server, or CoEDL would have a server, etc.
I guess my question sort of stems from the fact that you know, if funding is finite, and we'd obviously hope that you'd be able to extend funding, if you sort of put all your work into this server and this program, and then the funding to host it was lost, can you, before the funding is lost, can you just, I guess, pull it back down again?
Yeah, so that's why we've thought about having the 5 years sort of lifespan, so that often people have, like, you know, we have a couple of $1,000s to experiment with something, you can set this up for $1,000 for 5 years, and then if after 5 years you go, okay, well, that was a great experiment, or we want to use the data for something else, or we want to extend it, then you can. The beauty about this tool is that, as Janet said, the data is not attached to the app or the input tool. So the data is separate, and you can download that at any time and use it for anything that you need.
Sarah, can you just say a little bit about the data is separate? So what is the data in? If someone wants to download the data, but they don't want the apps, what would they be getting?
Very good question. So the data is sent to a database. So it's basically a house for the information to go into. And then you can download that data at any point by just, clicking export, and it gives you a spreadsheet basically. So all the information that you've typed in or you've cut and pasted in will be exported as a CSV or a spreadsheet file, and then you can use that to work on a different project, and all the sound files will be in a directory that you can then easily also just download and use for something else. So does that answer your question, Janet?
So in the spreadsheet, a spreadsheet doesn't have a sound file in it or an image file in it. It has a pointer to that sound file or a pointer to the image file. So you're keeping that information. So you have all your image files in a folder, and you can download the folder, and then your CSV, which you can have a look in an Excel spreadsheet, just has a little pointer into that folder to say which audio file corresponds to that line of the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So for people who don't think in databases, you can just think about your spreadsheet. You've got your columns. Each of those columns is some functionality in the app that's really interesting, useful. The coloring is all there inside the spreadsheet. Yeah.
So it's all. So the coloring is converted to code inside that. So if you imagine you've got a spreadsheet, like an Excel spreadsheet, and you've got the different columns, and you've got one column for language, one column for meaning, or word to word, what you are typing in today. And then if you color that word, it will convert it to a code. So it'll say color 6. And so that will be saved in your Excel spreadsheet as well as there'll be one column for file name, and then that will link to your image file or your sound file. So it'll be a file name.mp3, and then will tells the spreadsheet exactly where that file is that you've imported.
So the reason I'm drilling down into this level is because I think it's really important for people who think of themselves as newbies in tech, is that spreadsheet is human readable to some degree. It has a little bit of, a little bit of complicated codes in it, but you can read it as a human, which means that you can then use it with a different app in 10 years' time. You'll be able to look at it and the information's still there and it's still your data. And that's the thing that's really critical to sit behind any apps that you use.
Just thinking really long term, CSV as a file type, is that likely to stand the test of time regarding redundancy and the like?
Yeah, CSV is really, really simple. What it means is comma separated. So each column is separated by a comma, and then you go to the next column and the next column. So there's lots of other ways of doing it, and people have these little pipes from CSV to all these other fancy formats, and from fancy formats into CSV. So the other formats can code more complicated information, but the CSV as a ground level will, because it's human readable to us, it'll be readable to other machines in future. Sarah, would you agree?
Yeah, I think CSV file is a very solid format, and notwithstanding, we don't know what's going to happen with our digital universes. It might all one day fall over, but in terms of, it's not a proprietary format or anything, nobody owns it. So it can be easily transferred to different platforms. It's a very kind of, yeah, like a very readable format.
Right. There's just two questions. And so Michael, have you got a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we didn't want to, you know, sort of publish our own app and spend $1,000. Is there any way we could just sort of play with it online for, you know, more than the 5 days and for just sort of personal use? And
yeah, well, I actually think we could leave those these group databases up for a bit longer than a week. You know, especially coming into Christmas. And so how long would you like to explore the tool?
Well, I was sort of optimistically thinking just sort of like even just making my own like tool to learn like Gamilaroi or French or something that I'm using on Duolingo at the moment, and sort of try and use it practically just using the browser.
Yeah, so I mean that would involve creating a, you know, an instance for your project, even if it's private and not shared. There's just a little bit of work and storage involved in that shell.
Yeah, what we're hoping with these 4 databases is that if there are people keen to go on, well, they're already kind of ready to go, and we can start 4 projects, and that'll save a little bit of money because they already kind of set up. So, you know, so there will be just a slight advantage, but you know, yeah. So, but we can leave it like, you know, what do you say, Sarah? I mean, yeah, as you say, it's now Christmas. We're not all rushing to get involved in stuff straight away. So maybe to mid-January or something like that, just for.
Yeah, we could leave them up till, you know, why don't we say till the end of January?
End of January,
and then Michael, you can just maybe have a play with that. And then if you think it's useful for your own language learning purposes, even in a private set, you know, in a non-published app kind of way, then yeah, we could set something up for you. But yeah, there would have to be some kind of cost because there's a bit of labor attached to it. But otherwise, if you you know, if you have your own server and you can put the files there, then you could have a go at putting it up yourself. So
all right, cool.
Sina, could I ask you, have you got a question?
Yeah, so this is basically more on the interface level. So is there this possibility of kind of mixing this app, Listen and Talk app, with another interface? Like, for example, we have Facebook Messenger, and then we have applications like Rasa or Amazon Alexa, and then we kind of interface both of them together with their tokens, or maybe in the YML files or something like that. So is there a possibility to kind of like link this app with another like server or interface or something like that?
Do you mean to get the data from another interface and put it into the yeah, I mean, it's a shell, so it needs it picks up data from the database and puts it into that shell. So that data could theoretically come from somewhere else. So as Janet said, you could, you know, create a pipe into that listen shell from somewhere else. But yeah, we'd have to like make sure it matches, you know, that they can talk to each other.
So is that something that we can do as well with the current version of it? Like anybody can access the backend of it, or is there any limitations?
So we can share the files with you, and you can see if it can pick up what you're needing from your other platforms. But in my experience, you would probably need to, you know, do some work to make sure that that pipeline fits together. So,
yeah. Thank you.
No, Samantha?
I just had a question when we were talking earlier about the spreadsheets sitting on the server and that and being able to download all of the products that are uploaded into the app. And just for the language custodians to be able to explain exactly how that works, where is that language data sitting and how is it protected is my question.
So at the moment, with the Mangarai app, we came up with a token system where people who have got access to the, they could download the app from the App Store, but they would have to get a token from the community leaders to access the information in the database about the Mangarai phrases. And then at the back end, certain people were authorized to log in and upload images and change things, and then also flag things to be checked by other people, so that there was that verification process. And that's all. It's not public. That's all. It's not accessible to the public. You'd have to. So with the Mangarai app, you have to have that token to access it, or you have to have the password to access the back end. So so it's protected in that way.
So even though we've been presenting it as this toggling between, it's only certain people have that. So when you have the app, all you get is the back end. You don't get access to the front end. And with the back end, so say the app that I've got, when I put it on my phone, I'll just turn on my camera. When you put it on your phone, you just see the back end. You don't get any access to be able to input data. So it's a separate link that we use for people who have that link to input data and whatever. And the other side of it is that from the app, or even if it's just a link, you can't download any of the files. So you can't download a sound file out of the app you have. It's all locked away.
Thanks. So I think just following up on that, the question is there a particular cloud provider who's providing the where your data is sitting? Is it sitting in Australia? Is it sitting somewhere in Silicon Valley? Is it in China somewhere? So are you using Amazon Web Services as the underlying cloud provider, or do you have machines in your basement that you're using? I think one of the, it's a weird question, but it's kind of like, where's the machine that's running this? I think that might be what Samantha's asking.
So the Mangarai app and this current version that we've been looking at today is sitting on an Australian server. So it's an Australian host. It's not a Amazon server or a Google server or anything like that. It's a locally run hosting company that have really strong protections around data protection. But that said, if you got the files and you put them on a different service, say your organization had an IT department or had a website and you wanted to put the files up there, then that is really, then you're kind of on your own. Then you have to make sure that wherever you're putting the data is has got enough protections.
At UQ, a lot of our stuff is on the Amazon cloud. And so we do a lot of other work with people living with dementia. And we wanted to make sure that their data stayed in Australia and was not accessible to anyone within Amazon. So we spent 2 years negotiating with them and set up a direct service for UQ researchers to use a protected Amazon cloud that's secure in Australia, hosted, is not accessible even to Amazon researchers. So you can set them up, but you really need to know what you're arguing for and be prepared to spend a couple of years getting it, negotiating with it. Because people don't realize that all of these protections are things that are not just the tokens that protect you, but it's also where's the machine. As Sarah says, you're using an Australian provider where you are trusting their security.
Yes, thanks for that really important question too. I'm conscious that we're now at 12:33, so we have finished technically, but by all means, feel free to stay on and ask questions. but I do understand that people actually have lives they've got to go back to. So thank you so much for all of your attendance and yeah, and really interesting questions. Actually, that was something really valuable that people have really brought a lot to the to the class. So thank you. Manuel, if you've got a question, you've got your hand up.
Yes. If I remember correctly, someone mentioned you have tried this out for Mandarin. I was wondering whether you expect to further develop the usage of this technology for languages like big world languages like Mandarin or Spanish or something like that.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I actually was studying Mandarin for, you know, only 6 months or something, so not very long. But I did use the tool to just try it out with that language and to see if the characters, you know, it worked with the characters and things. So we haven't got any plans to develop that further, but there is an instance of Mandarin that we could share with you if you wanted to have a look. Yeah, with about 20 phrases or something. So
yeah, that'd be good. That'd be really cool if I could take a look at that. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mark, is there, will there be some way for me to send that to Manuel?
Yeah,
or...
I've got everyone's email address, so
Okay.
I can give you his address. Yep.
Okay, great.
And Alison has generously offered to collate the chat data, any important things, because there's been really lots of interesting stuff going in, and we can make that available as well. So thanks, Alison. And yes, Caroline's put eLearn Australia, so Sarah's website into the chat there too, so you can also contact her.
And email address too.
And email address too. Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's no further ado, really thanks for all your input and working with us today. And feel free, as I say, up to the end of January to go and hop in and make use of the databases and see what you can come up with. And I'm more than happy to field any questions if you have other questions. So thanks, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Maiawa.
Maiawa.
Thank you, Mark and Carolyn. Incredible
Maiawa.
session.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you for coming
Thanks,
on. Thanks, Janet, and so much for your input. That's really helpful, and Sarah as well.
Yeah.
Sarah and Sarah.
Thanks, Anna, Wani and Jody.
Thank you. See you,
Thank you.
Josie.
Thank you for the great
See you,
session.
Mark.
Thanks for coming along. It's really great. I think it's really good for people to see that this is not just, you know, white fellows coming up with an idea. It's actually a group effort. So, you know, thank you so much for coming and seeing and meeting everybody, or getting them to meet you.
Well, you
Talks-
know, Mark, you
Hey?
put together like you and your team down there have put together what I sort of saw something in that Hawaiian conference, and that sort of gave me that idea, you know, for getting more techno-y for an app idea. Yeah, so you're pretty much doing what I heard over there.
Well, it's not me, it's us. So
All right.
keep that in mind. All right.
Yeah.
We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Maiawa.
Okay. Yeah.